Chapter 1677. At this moment, everyone was a little dumbfounded. They looked at Yi Shiwen and the others in the sky in a daze. It was completely different from what they had imagined. A huge battle between the younger generation was resolved by Yi Shiwen with just one sword. One sword, and Yi Shiwen had resolved it. Everyone had thought of countless possible battle scenarios before, but they had never thought that it would be such a crushing result. It had completely exceeded the limits of everyone's imagination. One must know that just a few months ago, the news that spread out was that Yi Shiwen had defeated the Phoenix sect after a huge battle. After a period of causing trouble everywhere, many people were very clear about the strength of the Phoenix sect. Although the Phoenix sect was arrogant in terms of strength, they were not weak. Therefore, everyone judged that Yi Shiwen's strength was roughly at the peak of the celestial realm. Speaking of which, in the eyes of many, Gu Yuanbai and the others should be on par with Yi Shiwen, or even Bailey Yi and the others should be stronger than Yi Shiwen. At the very least, it should have been a tragic battle to the death, but the result was so easily resolved by Yi Shiwen. But it was just as Yi Shiwen had said before. Could it be that, in his opinion, everyone was just playing house? They were just playing house. Because he didn't care about their strength at all. He didn't care about them at all. At the start, everyone thought that Yi Shiwen was a little arrogant, but now they felt that Yi Shiwen wasn't exaggerating at all. He wasn't exaggerating, but it was the truth. Compared to Yi Shiwen's crushing strength, be it Bailey Yi, Gu Yuanbai, or Wang Qingxi, they were really like children playing house. And these three people were defeated by Yi Shiwen, not to mention the experts behind them. At this moment, all of them looked at Yi Shiwen with pale faces. They definitely didn't expect Yi Shiwen to be so terrifying, to actually be able to defeat their leader in such a way. Why do all of you want to attack together? If you do, then go ahead, don't waste time. Yi Shiwen faintly said. His eyes were like lightning as he looked at these people. It seemed as if he was looking at a group of dead people. These people would have rushed out if someone else had said this. After all, even if they weren't as good as Gu Yuanbai and the others, they were still first-class geniuses. How could they let others insult them like this? Especially when Yi Shiwen had asked them to attack together. This was blatantly looking down on their fighting strength. But now, they didn't have the courage to attack. Although they were arrogant, they weren't stupid. Just now, Gu Yuanbai and Wang Qingxi's joint attack was easily broken by Yi Shiwen, which shocked them greatly. Because Gu Yuanbai and Wang Qingxi were a combination that could cause great damage to them, but at this time, they were so vulnerable in Yi Shiwen's hands. Among the human race, there are such geniuses. It means that their luck hasn't run out yet. I thought that by taking advantage of the demon race's invasion this time, the human race could suffer heavy losses and never recover from this setback. Now it seems that we were thinking too much. Isn't that so? This Yi Shiwen is so powerful. He's only at the 8th level of the heaven realm, but he can actually store such a powerful force. It seems that he's not an ordinary person. They can't see it, but I can see it clearly. Everyone thought that Yi Shiwen defeated Gu Yuanbai and Wang Qingxi, but in fact, that's not the case at all. Gu Yuanbai and Wang Qingxi cooperated very well, but after all, they haven't cooperated before, so it's impossible for them to be the same person. This is their biggest flaw, and in the end, Yi Shiwen defeated them one by one. It's just that his speed is too fast, so it seems like he defeated the two of them together. A foreign race expert said disdainfully, as if he could see through Yi Shiwen's scheme. What's the use of you saying this, old thing? You're just jealous of our human race's geniuses. Although it's said that he defeated them one by one, not everyone can do it. When he used his full strength to deal with Gu Yuanbai, he was already prepared to deal with Wang Qingxi's attack. To be able to block Wang Qingxi's attack with his full strength, is this something an ordinary person can do? A human race expert immediately refuted. This battle had already attracted the attention of many experts, and it was far from as simple as the younger generation paying attention to it at the beginning. In other words, under the situation where several clans could not fight directly, the fight between these younger generations was almost like a fight between several clans. The strength of the younger generation was related to the future of the clan, so they would also acquiesce to the younger generation killing each other. Just like in the past, when Jiagu Zhenghao attacked the Yi clan and chased a demon clan genius into the demon territory, he received the full support of the Jiagu clan. Without the support of a powerful clan, with Jiagu Zhenghao's degree of arrogance, he would have been crushed to death long ago. Since no one wants to fight, then I'm leaving. Yi Shiwen glanced at the void and said. At this time, Bailey Yi, who was the only one who was considered to be in good condition, was constantly panting, as if he was in a fierce confrontation, fighting against his inner fear, and wanting to continue fighting with Yi Shiwen. But reason told him that the result of the battle just now had already been decided. In front of Yi Shiwen's powerful strength, he was nothing at all. Even the three of them together were not Yi Shiwen's opponent, let alone him alone. Good, Yi Shiwen, you are really arrogant. Suddenly, in the void, a figure appeared. It was a young man about 15 or 16 years old, with red lips and white teeth, like a porcelain doll carved from jade. He was extremely handsome, and his face had an extremely arrogant expression. At this time, he looked at Yi Shiwen with an inexplicable gaze, extremely arrogant. Finally willing to come out? I thought you were going to be a tortoise until the end. Yi Shiwen sneered and looked at the young man. When did someone hide in the void? I didn't even know. At this time, Bailey Yi was suddenly shocked to find that someone was hiding not far away from him, but he did not notice it at all. If it was attributed to the opponent's superior strength, then the concealment ability was very strong, but this was not right, because Yi Shiwen had discovered it a long time ago. At this time, Bailey Yi only remembered that during the fight, Yi Shiwen had been holding back a little bit of strength. Originally, he thought that it was because Yi Shiwen did not need to use his full strength to deal with him, but now it seemed that it was to guard against this person. And this person was also very familiar to him. Feng Wuying, the representative of the Phoenix clan. During this period of time, he had met Feng Wuying a few times, and both of them were arrogant people, and also people who refused to admit defeat. Such a meeting naturally could not be considered friendly. It was just that this time, Feng Wuying came to find trouble with Yi Shiwen, and to a certain extent, the purpose of suppressing the human clan was similar, so he resisted and did not make a move. But at this time, he suddenly felt a sense of relief. If he had made a move at that time, then at that time, he was afraid that he would face a tragic death. Moreover, this Feng Wuying was far more ruthless than Yi Shiwen. Feng Wuying had made a few moves, and without exception, his opponents were either dead or crippled, without exception. One could imagine how cruel he was, and what he liked to do the most was to break the opponent's Tao, forcibly crushing the opponent's understanding of the Tao, and destroying the opponent's lifelong hope to move forward. Compared to this Yi Shiwen, he seemed to be much better. At this moment, he didn't bother to find out how strong Feng Wuying was. Although he originally thought that Feng Wuying was at most on par with him, he had always treated the matter of Feng Wuying being in the middle stage of the celestial realm as a joke. They were both geniuses, but he hadn't even stepped into the middle stage of the celestial realm, so how could Feng Wuying do it? But now, he suddenly realized that Yi Shiwen, who had always not paid much attention to them, and even scolded them as playing house, was extremely cautious towards this Feng Wuying. Just from this alone, one could see the difference between the two of them. In a flash, many thoughts flashed through his mind, and a look of unwillingness flashed across his face. Yi Shiwen defeated the Phoenix sect in one battle and became famous again. He had always looked down on Yi Shiwen, and wanted to find Yi Shiwen, defeat him, and add another person to his defeated list. He wanted to make his name even more famous. Today should have been the day he became the main character, should have been the day he became famous, but now it seemed like he had to give up his position to Feng Wuying and Yi Shiwen. When he thought of this, he was extremely unwilling. However, no matter how unwilling he was, he knew the severity of the situation. His eyes flickered as he looked at Yi Shiwen and Feng Wuying. It was as if he wanted to imprint their silhouettes deeply into his mind and never forget them. From today onwards, these two people would be his target. He would no longer be arrogant and think that he was invincible. In this world, there really was a higher mountain. Thinking it through, Bailey E hurriedly gave way. With Bailey E as an example, instantly the experts of the other three races all gave way. Feng Wuying looked at Yi Shiwen coldly and said, "I didn't expect that you would actually notice me? Your nose is quite sharp." Hee, what's so difficult about that? Yi Shiwen smiled indifferently. It seemed as if it was something that wasn't worth mentioning. You're not good at hiding. You're too arrogant. You think that no one can find you. So, you don't try to hide anything. There are too many people here who can see through you. It's just that no one has pointed it out. Chapter 1678. Yi Shiwen just looked at Feng Wuying indifferently. On the contrary, Feng Wuying's expression turned a little ugly at this time. He had always thought highly of himself, but Yi Shiwen's words were like a slap to his face. He thought that he was proud of himself. He used the secret technique of the Phoenix clan to hide in the void, thinking that no one would be able to find him. In the end, it was seen through by Yi Shiwen with a simple glance. Thinking about it again, there were so many powerhouses gathered on this planet, it was impossible to hide from them. He was too arrogant. However, what kind of person was he? He had already sorted out his emotions in a moment, then looked at Yi Shiwen and said, "That's a good move. You want to use words to shake my Taoist heart the moment we meet, but it's not enough to just have a sharp tongue." Yi Shiwen was very indifferent. He was not surprised that Feng Wuying could see through his calculations so easily. On the contrary, he would be disappointed if he could not see through it. For people to be able to grow to this point, how many were idiots? It was just that many people were arrogant, their own strength was tyrannical and invincible, and they had powerful forces behind them, so they did not use such calculations to deal with the enemy. As long as he used tyrannical strength to defeat the opponent, wouldn't it be fine? A lot of people thought the same way. You saw through it? That's not a big deal. Anyway, I didn't think that this method would work. Yi Shiwen admitted directly like a hoodlum. At this time, everyone finally reacted. Since the confrontation between the two had their own advantages, if they wanted to break the other's state of mind, they would have to start with words. "I heard that the Phoenix sect was defeated by you?" Feng Wuying looked at Yi Shiwen coldly and said, "What a useless piece of trash, actually defeated by the hands of a human." Feng Wuying's words were arrogant, like a god, and he did not put Yi Shiwen in his eyes at all. "Yi Kuang and Yi Qiong were seriously injured by you, right?" Yi Shiwen did not answer Feng Wuying, but instead asked about Yi Kuang and Yi Qiong. Feng Wuying glanced at Yi Shiwen. He didn't intend to deny this issue. He nodded and said, "I did it." "So what? You're just an ant. How dare you stand in my way? Don't blame me for what happens next." Feng Wuying's tone was still as haughty as ever. Perhaps other than powerful races like the Phoenix and the Dragon race, he didn't care about races like the human race, which were naturally weak. From the bottom of his heart, he couldn't understand how these people, who were born as weak as ants, were qualified to lead the ancient Barrens continent and become one of the 4 major clans. He was already in the transcendent realm when he was born. His bloodline was also very noble. Just like all innate races, the innate strength almost determined their lifetime achievements. He had always felt that his success was completely innate. Everything was like eating and drinking. He naturally reached the celestial being realm, and naturally stepped into the celestial being realm. It was a mystery to him how a weak race like the human race, where only one celestial being realm expert could be born out of countless people, managed to survive until now. There was even a trace of deep disgust in his eyes. The heavenly Tao was constant. Everyone had their own position. Weak ants, since they were already ants from the moment they were born, then they should continue to be ants. Why did they have to struggle to climb up like this? It was disgusting to look at. Ant. Yi Shiwen looked at him coldly. Perhaps his relationship with Yi Kuang wasn't that deep, but his relationship with Yi Qiong was already extremely good. Yi Qiong, whom he regarded as a good friend, was almost crippled by him. In his eyes, it was just like stepping on an ant. He didn't think much of it. That's right. So what if I defeat the Phoenix sect? It's just a feathered beast. Yi Shiwen laughed coldly, as if he was talking about something unrelated to him. Flat feathered beast. Feng Wuying's expression suddenly became interesting. The Phoenix clan was full of nonsense. Many ignorant people worshipped them as innate gods. However, weren't they just feathered beasts? In the distant past, the Phoenix clan was known as the leader of the birds. From the looks of it, didn't it seem like he was admitting that he was a feathered beast? Yi Shiwen's words not only made Feng Wuying's expression suddenly become interesting, but also the expressions of the other beast clan elders. Flat feathered beast. Flat feathered beast. Even if they transformed into a human form, they couldn't get rid of the fundamental fact that their original form was a feathered beast. However, in the past, who dared to mention this in front of them? Wouldn't that be courting death? While they were dismissive of the human race, and felt that they were nothing more than a race of slaves back then, they were aggrieved that they still had to transform into a human form even after cultivating to a profound level. Reality had proven that the human form was the most suitable for cultivation of the innate Taoism aptitude. Such contradictory and contemptuous thoughts had always existed in the minds of the Beast Clan, the Sea Clan, and the 100 Clan alliance. At this moment, Yi Shiwen's words were tantamount to having their shortcomings exposed, and they almost flew into a rage. Yi Shiwen, you have a sharp tongue. But what use is that? In my eyes, you humans are nothing more than a bunch of weaklings. Since you're ants, you should have the fate of ants. Just be obedient ants on the ground, or do you want to become eagles in the sky? Feng Wuying said mockingly as he looked at Yi Shiwen. He was a beneficiary of the bloodline theory, which was why he was a fundamental supporter of the bloodline theory. Yi Shiwen wasn't angry in the face of his contemptuous and mocking gaze. He didn't have extraordinary aptitude, nor did he have an astonishing bloodline. However, there were many people who claimed to be geniuses and thought that their bloodlines were extraordinary, only to fall by his sword in the end. Do you think that everyone has their own fate? Yi Shiwen looked at Feng Wuying and said, even if there is, it's not something you can understand. In my opinion, your fate has already been decided long ago, and that is to kneel at my feet. Feng Wuying's pupils suddenly contracted in the face of Yi Shiwen's sarcasm. At once, flames flickered in his eyes, and a dot of Nanmingli fire burned as if it was going to burn through the sky. What? You want to fight? Come on then. I have important things to do now, and I don't have time to play with you. If you want to fight, hurry up. Yi Shiwen looked impatient. His tone was like an adult facing a child who was pestering him to play with, and Yi Shiwen said it with a very realistic expression. Suddenly, laughter broke out all around them. Although many people knew that Feng Wuying was very difficult to deal with and couldn't be offended, Yi Shiwen's words were indeed very funny. They couldn't help but laugh out loud. However, they soon discovered that they weren't the only ones who were laughing. Immediately, they started to laugh unscrupulously. As the saying goes, the law doesn't punish the masses. This was it. Hearing these people's mocking voices, Feng Wuying's face suddenly turned green and white, and it became even more exciting. In just a few short verbal confrontations, he was provoked by Yi Shiwen, but on the contrary, Yi Shiwen didn't move an inch in the face of his verbal attacks, as if he didn't hear it at all, like an old monk in meditation. The difference in the state of mind between the two could be seen at a glance. Ever since he was born, he had been a member of the noble Phoenix clan. Moreover, he was a pure-blooded Phoenix. Everything was as simple as eating and drinking. He could easily reach a level that many people of ordinary races couldn't achieve. Therefore, he hadn't encountered any major setbacks. He had gone through some experiences over the years, and had beheaded many experts. It could even be said that he had walked out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. His mind could also be said to be firm. However, he couldn't be compared to Yi Shiwen, who had been fighting with others since the beginning of his cultivation. He had escaped from death many times. He had tempered himself by seeing hope in the midst of despair. He couldn't be compared to Yi Shiwen. Feng Wuing had thought that he had great lethality in pointing out Yi Shiwen's fate, and that he would panic. However, he hadn't expected that Yi Shiwen would be completely indifferent to it. In fact, it could be said that he didn't agree with this idea at all. On the contrary, he felt that Feng Wuing was simply naive and cute. Pattern, 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 pattern. If bloodline could determine everything, then shouldn't the noblest bloodline be Yi Shukong, the son of God? After countless generations, the bloodline of God was actually activated. But in fact, in the few confrontations between the two, Yi Shiwen was steadily better than Yi Shukong, not to mention those who died tragically in the hands of Yi Shiwen in the past, who were said to be the top geniuses with the bloodline talent. Humph, now that you have just experienced a big battle, I won't take advantage of you. 3 days later, do you dare to fight with me? At this time, Feng Wuing suppressed the depressed feeling in his heart because of Yi Shiwen's words, and said with a straight face, staring at Yi Shiwen, "Why wouldn't I dare? Isn't it just a fight? Do we need to specifically choose a time?" Yi Shiwen shook his head, looking so unteachable. Feng Wuing really wanted to vomit blood. He was officially challenging Yi Shiwen. Why did he say it like a gang fight on the street, which could start at any time, was not worth mentioning at all. Humph, then let's meet in 3 days, life or death don't matter. He snorted coldly, and did not continue to stay. He was afraid that he would vomit blood again because of Yi Shiwen. He had completely lost in the matter of verbal confrontation. Yi Shiwen was like a reef in the sea. No matter how terrible the waves were, they would only be smashed on the reef by the waves, and he himself would not move an inch. Just this mentality alone was enough to be called terrifying. Chapter 1679. In the end, although Yi Shiwen and Feng Wuing didn't fight, it was already beyond everyone's expectations. Yi Shiwen defeated 3 famous geniuses with a dominating method. He also became famous immediately. Many big shots were paying attention to this battle. The big shots of the major forces had come to participate in this time's alliance meeting. And Yi Shiwen's performance had also entered their eyes. It could be said that this battle alone was enough to make Yi Shiwen famous throughout the entire ancient Barrens continent, even if he didn't do anything in the past 10 years. Becoming famous in the world with a single battle was nothing more than this. From now on, Yi Shiwen would be added to the list of young talents from various forces. Regardless of whether they believed it or not, after this battle, Yi Shiwen would definitely become a target of fear for many. He's Yi Shiwen? In the depths of the demon clan's gathering ground, an overbearing figure stood in a courtyard. He looked up into the sky as if he could see through the entire sky. He was looking at Yi Shiwen, who was in the void. There was no one beside him. Only a voice appeared out of thin air and landed beside his ear. "King, it's him." In that case, the information I received previously that the Koan Pring egg was in his hands is correct, said the overbearing middle-aged man coldly. If Yi Shiwen was here, he would realize that this person was very familiar. He was none other than the 9-headed infant demon king of the 9-headed infant tribe, whom Yi Shiwen had met previously. He was like a peerlessly domineering king. Just by standing there, he possessed an unparalleled might. Pressure in all directions was a description of this kind of person. What a daring kid! The nine-headed infant demon king sneered. No one knew if he was mocking Yi Shiwen or himself. I planned for 100 years and made a move. I wanted to eliminate Kuan Peng when he was at his weakest after giving birth to the egg. I wanted to completely eradicate this scourge from the demon clan. In the end, the Kuan Peng egg fell into the hands of a human. In the end, it triggered a long war between the nine-headed infant tribe and Kuan Peng. In the end, we suffered great losses. Man proposes, God disposes. Your Majesty, you don't have to take it to heart. Although our race suffered heavy losses in the chaos of the Kuan Peng, we also used the power of the Kuan Peng to completely eradicate the direct descendants of the king who opposed us. Mind? Why would I mind? The nine-headed infant demon king stood with his hands behind his back. His figure grew taller and taller. I just found it funny. But it's good that he found it. Since he dared to extend his hand into our demon clan, I will let him know that some things are not so easily taken. If he wants to take them, he will have to exchange his life. You're right, King, the voice said slowly. Let's go. I'll go meet the other demon kings. I won't let this matter rest so easily. The nine-headed infant demon king disappeared into thin air after he finished speaking. Meanwhile, in another residence of the 100 Clan Alliance, Beishan Shui stood beside a tall middle-aged man. This middle-aged man had a handsome face, but he was very dignified. Only someone who had been in power for a long time could cultivate such an aura. You were defeated by him? The middle-aged man asked. Beside him, Beishan Shui only smiled bitterly and nodded. That's right. I was defeated by him, and I lost without any suspense. It's not unjust for you to lose to him, the middle-aged man said. He wasn't this powerful before, but he has improved so much in such a short time. If it were a few months ago, he would have just broken through. At most, he would be on par with Bailey E and the others, Beishan Shui said. But that's not a big deal. The most important thing is that he killed the puppet I arranged in the clan. This is a big deal. The middle-aged man's words were shocking. He turned out to be the patriarch of the Northern Mountain Clan. He dared to come to the Alliance meeting in person this time. He was one of the most distinguished people on the entire planet. This time it won't be so easy. This time, I'll take this opportunity to settle the score with the human race. The patriarch of the Northern Mountain Clan snorted coldly. There were many undercurrents like this, and they kept repeating themselves on the planet. Yi Shiwen did not know that after Feng Wuing left, he hurriedly sent Fa Wushuang to the human race's encampment. At this time, Fa Wushuang was seriously injured and needed to heal. Then, Yi Shiwen personally went to meet the patriarch, Yi Tianxiong, and reported the news that the demon race was about to attack. Yi Tianxiong frowned, stood with his hands behind his back, and said, "Fortunately, you reminded me. Otherwise, it would be too late if we were caught off guard by the demon race." As the actual host of this alliance meeting, it was impossible to say that the human race did not take any precautions. The situation was even worse than the previous alliance meeting. Moreover, the demon race's base camp was deep in the starry sky. Several forces of various clans in the starry sky were also forces that attacked the demon race all year round. They were constantly searching for the demon race's base camp. Naturally, they would strictly guard against the demon race's trouble. But the real problem was that they did not expect the honor demon to come personally and appear from the human race's line of defense. Because in fact, with the remaining strength of the demon race on the ancient Baron's continent, even if all of them were to join forces, they would not be a match for the human race. They could only be easily suppressed. At this time, the demon race could fight with the human race so well and not be at a disadvantage. To a large extent, it was because of the Abyss Demon Master's powerful strength that was like a bug. Otherwise, how could they be defeated by the human race? If the Abyss Demon Master came in person, then everything would be troublesome. If it's just like what you said, it's fine if it's just a spiritual avatar, said Yi Tianqiong. If it's his real body, I'm afraid that the entire planet will be destroyed. The Abyss Demon Master has such an ability. If the Abyss Demon Master appears here, then the line of defense outside the royal court might not be able to hold on, said Yi Shiwen. Without the support of the Abyss Demon Master, the demon race will not be able to withstand a single blow. You're underestimating him too much. To him, these aren't important at all. He alone can break through the entire human race's line of defense. He doesn't care at all. Yi Tianqiong said. There was a tinge of sorrow in his tone. To them, it was a great humiliation to be forced into such a state by a demon. At that level, the number of subordinates under him didn't matter at all. Yi Shiwen thought about it and agreed. If his opponents were all in the transcendent realm or the law manifestation realm, it wouldn't matter how many there were. He alone could break through the line of defense, unless he had some powerful martial instrument. Although this analogy wasn't right, with the strength of the Abyss Demon Master, it wasn't much different from this analogy. If it weren't for the human race's deep foundation and the few treasures left behind by the human king, they might not be able to restrain the Abyss Demon Master. So, it's fine if it's just an avatar. However, if it's his real body, then it'll be a terrible disaster for us, said Yi Tianqiong with a frown. Now we can't even find someone who can control him in the ancient desolate. Sigh. Then, let's end it quickly, said Yi Shiwen. No. If we leave now, we can avoid the Abyss Demon Master. However, our human race will also become the laughing stock of the other races. Can we still raise our heads in front of them in the future? Said Yi Tianqiong while shaking his head. Now, the other races are waiting to see us become a joke. How can we let them have their way? Moreover, I can tell you that it'll be very difficult for the human race to resist these demons alone. So, we have to find a way to pull in the other races. As long as we can achieve this goal, it doesn't matter even if we all sacrifice ourselves. Yi Tianqiong's tone was extremely firm. This shocked Yi Shiwen because he thought of a possibility. He immediately looked up at Yi Tianqiong in shock. Yes, it's exactly what you think, said Yi Tianqiong while gritting his teeth. However, you don't have to worry about this matter. I'll talk to them. Also, don't tell them about the appearance of the Abyss Demon Master this time. Understand? I understand. Yi Shiwen nodded. His heart was still like a raging wave. If his guess was correct, then this matter might become a shocking murder case. Yi Tianqiong's idea could be said to be crazy. He wanted to use the matter of the Abyss Demon Master to drag the other races who were still watching into the water. If all these top experts died, then even the various races would suffer greatly and be furious. However, the most important thing was that there was no way to find out the reason for this matter. After all, it was the Abyss Demon Master who did it. At first, it could be said that they were just watching from the sidelines. However, in the end, they had no choice but to take action. However, at the same time, there were also many experts of the human race in this area. If they really allowed the Abyss Demon Master to wreak havoc here, the human race would suffer great losses in the end. Only a similarly serious loss could dispel the doubts of the other group. It was precisely because of this that even he couldn't help but be shocked. If this idea was put into practice, it would definitely be a shocking plan. You don't have to worry about this matter. Anyway, in the end, you won't be implicated. What you need to do now is to prepare for the battle with Feng Wu Ying in 3 days. You must win this battle. Originally, we planned to let Fa Wushuang fight, but now that he is seriously injured, this heavy responsibility can only fall into your hands. Now, among the experts of the younger generation here, only you have this ability. Chapter 1680. Yi Qiong looked at Yi Shiwen. If it was before, he didn't think that Yi Shiwen had the strength to defeat Feng Wuying. However, after the previous battle, He saw with his own eyes that Bailey E and the others were all young elites of their generation. They were all considered figures of their generation, but in the end, they were defeated by Yi Shiwen without any chance to fight back. That was why he wanted Yi Shiwen to fight. At this time, the human race couldn't lose their confidence. I understand. I will prepare well, Yi Shiwen said. After Yi Shiwen said goodbye to Yi Tianqiong, he immediately returned to his residence. This time, the situation was much more complicated than he had imagined. Even if the Abyss Demon Lord's true body might descend, the human race couldn't retreat at this time, not even by a single step. Every race was waiting to see a joke. The more it was at this time, the more they had to face it head-on. If it was just an incarnation of the Abyss Demon Lord descending, then there was nothing to worry about. Although he was a King Division Abyss Demon Lord, there were many experts of this level on this planet. Just Yi Tianqiong alone was a terrifying expert of this level. If it was just an incarnation descending, it wouldn't be able to cause any waves. What they were most afraid of was his true body descending. If that was the case, it would definitely be a disaster. Yi Shiwen originally planned to visit Wushuang, but he was told that he had been sent back to the ancient barons. Because his injuries were too serious, he couldn't delay it any longer. However, Yi Shiwen's heart was a little hazy. Just as Yi Shiwen was preparing for the battle in a few days, the outside world was in a heated stage about him. During this period of time, Feng Wuying could be said to have become famous in one fell swoop. He made a name for himself in the ancient barons. At first, many people were very dissatisfied with him, but in the end they were all defeated by him. Even some of the famous early-stage Celestial Realm experts were no exception. However, Yi Shiwen wasn't bad either. He easily defeated Bailey E and the others, displaying shocking strength. Soon, the two of them will fight for real. Who do you think will win? I'm still optimistic about Feng Wuying. After all, he's from the Phoenix clan and has a noble bloodline. Moreover, he has many secret techniques. Although I don't know what kind of fortuitous encounter Yi Shiwen had that allowed his combat power to be so powerful, he's not even in the celestial realm. It's already surprising that he could defeat Bailey E and the others. It's still too difficult for him to fight Feng Wuying. I don't think so. This Yi Shiwen has always done such unexpected things since his debut. Just like in the Imperial Court competition, he unexpectedly defeated everyone in one fell swoop and won the championship. I don't think so. How can that be the same? In the Imperial Court competition, they didn't fight directly, but this time, he's going to fight Feng Wuying directly. No matter how glorious his past achievements are, I'm afraid he's not his match. Everyone had their own speculations about the outcome of the fight between these two. These people were the leaders of their respective forces, so they had their own basis for their speculations. This matter had caused quite a commotion for a while. Although there had been several fights between the experts of the younger generation before, but none of them had ever attracted as much attention as the fight between Yi Shiwen and Feng Wuying. It was as if everything else had suddenly disappeared, and this was the only thing left in the world. And in the midst of the discussion, 3 days passed in the blink of an eye, like a white steed flashing past a crevice, without a sound. In the mountain range where the two of them were about to exchange blows, countless experts rushed over in advance. Streams of spirit consciousness enveloped the entire mountain range. Although these experts were still in a relatively far place, they could use their divine senses to completely observe the battlefield inside. The scene was silent, but in the entire void, countless divine senses were communicating, and it was very lively. Suddenly, a figure passed through the void, and everyone looked at it. Who else could it be but Feng Wuying? At this moment, they saw Feng Wuying in a fiery robe. His body carried a soaring momentum, and he descended from the sky, like a monarch descending to the world. He stood quietly on the peak of the mountain, his eyes looking into the distance. No one knew what he was looking at, but everyone knew that he was waiting for the other protagonist of today's challenge to appear, Yi Shiwen. This peerless genius of the human race who had been praised for the past 3 days. After a brilliant feat 10 years ago, he didn't make any progress in the past 10 years, but 10 years later, he became even more tyrannical. At this moment, Beishan Shui looked at Feng Wuying from afar, and he couldn't help but frown and say, "He's so strong, I'm probably not his match." Previously, it had been very difficult for him to deal with the Phoenix sect. Although after this period of training, he believed that he should not be inferior to the Phoenix sect, but when he saw Feng Wuying's momentum again, he felt that he was no match for him. Feng Wuying just stood quietly in the void, but his entire body seemed to be integrated into the breathing of the Great Way, and he was silent. However, when he opened his eyes, he saw the peerlessly domineering figure again. He knew that this was something that could only be achieved by comprehending the Great Way to an extremely profound level, or at least, he couldn't do it at the moment. Therefore, just based on the momentum alone, Beishan Shui knew that he should not be Feng Wuying's match, and even without the two sides fighting. I just don't know if Yi Shiwen is a match for him. Like most people, Beishan Shui did not have an accurate opinion in his heart. This was because the strength of these two people had already surpassed the level he could come into contact with. For a person with low strength to judge the outcome of a battle between experts with high strength, this in itself was very laughable, wasn't it? Just as everyone was discussing, they saw Feng Wuying suddenly raise his head, look into the void, and say, "He's here." And at this time, everyone saw a shocking rainbow light coming from the other side of the sky. The dreadful rainbow light pulled horizontally, and brought along Yi Shiwen's phantom. It was as if he was a legendary deity, and his imposing aura was far greater than that of Feng Wuying's. In fact, some of the rogue cultivator's old ancestors were stunned by Yi Shiwen's momentum just by looking at it. Although he had not reached the celestial realm, he had a terrifying momentum and strength that far exceeded that of ordinary celestial realm expert. At this moment, Yi Shiwen was like the only true god in the world, and the entire world disappeared in an instant, leaving only Yi Shiwen. He was the god of creation of the entire world. Many experts of the older generation were stunned by his momentum. So strong. Is this his true strength? Beishan Shui couldn't help but gasp, his eyes filled with shock. Although he had overestimated Yi Shiwen's strength, the terrifying strength that Yi Shiwen displayed at this moment had already surpassed the strength that he had displayed when he took care of Bailey Yi and the others, and it was not just a little bit stronger. Those who originally didn't think highly of Yi Shiwen also collectively shut their mouths at this moment, completely shocked by Yi Shiwen's posture that was like a celestial being. Yi Shiwen looked at Feng Wuying coldly. The reason why he used such a shocking posture as soon as he appeared was because he had taken a fancy to Feng Wuying. Feng Wuying's strength made even him somewhat fearful, so he decided to go all out and absolutely not give Feng Wuying any chance to take advantage of him. Yi Shiwen's huge momentum descended on Feng Wuying, but Feng Wuying only smiled coldly and said, "You're just bluffing." As he said that, an even more powerful momentum erupted from his body, directly smashing Yi Shiwen's descending momentum into smithereens. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A terrifying airflow swept over, and the collision of momentum between the two directly brought about a huge airflow that filled the sky. So strong. Everyone couldn't help but be dumbfounded when they saw this scene. It was merely a confrontation of momentum, but it had already caused many experts in the ninth heaven of the celestial realm to be unable to stand steadily. If this continued, the power of the real battle would be so terrifying that it was simply unimaginable. Yi Shiwen's crushing momentum was instantly smashed into smithereens, and then the scorching momentum on Feng Wuying's body fell on Yi Shiwen's body like a ball of flame, as if it was going to swallow everything alive. Yi Shiwen's hand was on the longsword, and his figure was incomparably straight. In the face of this scorching momentum, There wasn't the slightest change in his expression, as if he was facing a scorching hot momentum at all. His entire body stood ramrod straight, like a long spear, soaring into the sky. In an instant, a terrifying force directly swept out, and a soaring sword momentum soared from his body, directly cutting this incomparably scorching momentum in the air, directly soaring into the sky. Then, that incomparably scorching aura directly split apart, and then fell on both sides of Yi Shiwen's body. It was like a raging wave, directly burning the air and the sky. The exchange between the two was almost completed in an instant. This kind of confrontation of momentum was even more of a test of both sides' confidence. Everyone was dazzled by the scene. This was merely a confrontation of momentum, testing each other's strength, and it was already so intense. This made the crowd even more excited. Even those big shots who were hidden at the side were interested. Regardless of whether it was Yi Shiwen or Feng Wuying, since they had already reached the celestial realm, this level of strength was no longer a level that could be casually ignored. Even if it was only the initial celestial realm, it was still a figure that could influence the entire ancient Baron's continent's overlord level. This is a battle of celestial realm willpower. No, I'm afraid that even ordinary celestial realm experts aren't this strong. Someone in the crowd exclaimed. Feng Wuying merely took a glance at Yi Shiwen. This time, he didn't say anything, and instantly tore out a fiery red figure. He directly attacked. Chapter 1681. Feng Wuying's movements were extremely fast. He brought forth a sea of fire in the void. Behind him, a pair of fiery red wings instantly spread open, bursting out with multicolored light. At this time, the fiery red Zhen Yuan on his body suddenly surged, like a huge phoenix, sweeping towards Yi Shiwen in an overwhelming manner. Under his wings, countless powers were boiling, and countless flames were burning, fusing into countless laws of fire. His speed was extremely fast. Compared to Feng Zong, it seemed to be the same movement technique, but it was not just a little bit faster. Compared to Feng Zong, Feng Wuying was more proficient in this set of movement techniques. In the face of Feng Wuying's sudden attack, Yi Shiwen merely snorted coldly. At this time, he finally moved. The hand that was pressed on the hilt of his sword suddenly pulled out a shocking sword light that chilled the entire sky. Countless tyrannical sword lights rose and fell in the void, and then condensed into a huge fallen angel. All of a sudden, it swept towards Feng Wuying's sudden attack of the phoenix. Rumble! A terrifying collision occurred, and it seemed as if the world had completely collapsed from this terrifying collision. Everyone only saw the huge fallen angel and the flaming phoenix collide fiercely. Both sides directly collided, and regardless of whether it was the fallen angel's sword technique or the flaming phoenix's laws of fire, they were both considered martial arts masters, and any casual move of theirs carried endless power. Yi Shiwen's sword technique directly slashed out a sword formation, bringing with it powerful laws, automatically forming a sword technique to crush the phoenix. As for Feng Wuying's flames, they formed an earth-shattering sea of flames that seemed as though they were going to incinerate everything in the world. The battle between the two sides was already extremely intense from the beginning. The terrifying power rebounded through the collision, rebounding onto both of them. Thump, thump, thump. Both of them took a few steps back, and the first exchange ended in a draw. Not bad. Feng Wuying glanced at Yi Shiwen, and finally squeezed out these two words through his teeth. The terrifying will of fire on his body was frenzied, but it was also terrifying. You're only SOSO. Yi Shiwen just looked at Feng Wuying and said with a smile. You want to be arrogant in the ancient wilderness with only this kind of strength? It's not your turn to be arrogant in our human race. Well said by Yi Shiwen. During this period of time, Feng Wuying has been too arrogant. Unfortunately, Fa Wushuang is the only one among our 5 magnates, and Fa Wushuang left with Yi Shiwen some time ago. This has given him the opportunity to become famous. That's right. There are no heroes in this era. That's why the lad is famous. Yi Shiwen's words immediately resonated with many experts of the human race. Feng Wuying's arrogance had displeased many people during this period of time, and it wasn't just the human race, but the other races as well. From a certain perspective, the human race could be considered to be in the same camp as them. They were all in the same trench, and they were all natives of the ancient Baron's continent. Compared to an outsider like Feng Wuying, they were naturally closer. The most important thing was that Feng Wuying was too arrogant, looking down on everyone. He had defeated so many famous young elites of the ancient desolate era, and it was clear that he didn't place the ancient desolate era in his eyes at all. Not only did he belittle the human race, but he also looked down on them. How could they feel good about it? But it just so happened that he was unable to suppress his arrogance due to various reasons. Even though Feng Wuying was extremely arrogant, his strength was indeed top-notch amongst the younger generation, and there were only a few amongst the various clans that could go against him. Even if the older generation could suppress him, they couldn't do so. They didn't mind bullying the weak, but it depended on the situation. Feng Wuying had the entire Phoenix race behind him, which was a race that was even stronger than the 4 clans of the ancient desolate era. Now that Yi Shiwen had directly suppressed his aura, everyone felt a sense of satisfaction. Their ancient desolate era wasn't without people. The Phoenix race shouldn't be happy too early. As for the experts of the other races who had been holding back their anger, even if they couldn't directly cheer for Yi Shiwen, they were secretly happy in their hearts. Looking at the fight between Yi Shiwen and Feng Wuying, they knew that both sides were evenly matched. Originally, both sides had a group of supporters who thought that the other side was far from being a match for the side they supported. Now, it seemed that this wasn't the case. You'll know if that's the case if you try it yourself. Feng Wuying laughed coldly. Just as he finished speaking, his entire body started to turn blurry in the air, leaving behind only an afterimage. Yi Shiwen was suddenly alarmed. He suddenly opened his eyes, and his gaze was like lightning. In the void, he could clearly see a fiery red brilliance breaking through the sky. In an instant, it had already rushed in front of Yi Shiwen. Its speed was so fast that ordinary people wouldn't be able to see how fast this brilliance was. So fast. Yi Shiwen immediately reacted. He had seen the speed of the Kunpeng before. It was said to be able to fly 90,000 miles in one go. In almost an instant, its entire body had already disappeared. Now, he could see such a shocking scene from the body of the young Kunpeng. When the Kunpeng transformed into a Kun, its entire body seemed to be completely formed by the laws of the wind attribute. Its speed was so fast that even the ability to teleport could not keep up with the speed of the Kunpeng. It could even be said that Yi Shiwen had never seen a creature that was faster than the Kunpeng. Within the same realm, it was almost unparalleled. However, according to Yemo, if he could train his demon wings to the 3rd level, he would be able to surpass the speed of the Kunpeng and truly reach the level of astonishing speed. This was the movement technique of the Demon King in the past. Speaking of it, it was definitely one of the most tyrannical movement techniques in the world. Who was the Demon King? He was an emperor-level figure who could move heaven and earth. He was a powerful existence that was above the ancestors of the Kunpeng race and the Demon Master. As for the movement skill of the Phoenix race, he had seen it once before. However, the Phoenix sect had been completely countered by him back then. This time around, Feng Wuying had truly displayed the powerful foundation of the Phoenix race as the leader of the flying beast. His movement skill was invincible. Compared to the soaring speed of the Kunpeng, the fire-like speed of the Phoenix clan was also extremely fast. In a split second, the speed of the Phoenix clan had soared to the extreme. Yi Shiwen never dared to underestimate the Phoenix clan. They were a terrifying existence that once ruled the ancient times. Even if they retreated to the ancient Phoenix domain, they still had a huge influence on the ancient times. He had cultivated the Phoenix regeneration technique. The Phoenix regeneration technique had saved his life so many times that he couldn't even count it. So far, he hadn't seen a healing technique that was more powerful than the Phoenix regeneration technique. Based on this alone, he didn't dare to underestimate the Phoenix clan. In an instant, thoughts flashed in Yi Shiwen's mind. However, his hands did not slow down at all. The angel sword in his hand directly slashed out countless sword lights, and slashed horizontally towards Feng Wuing. Both sides were fast to the extreme, fighting speed with speed. Among the experts present, even the experts in the early stage of the Heaven Realm could not see the movements of both sides clearly. Many warriors below the Heaven Realm were even more confused about what was going on. They only saw Yi Shiwen suddenly attack, and the sword light stirred up a shocking sword, piercing through the sky. 3 feet in front of Yi Shiwen, a figure slowly appeared. This was no other person, but Feng Wuing, and Yi Shiwen's sword light directly pierced through him. Everyone looked at this scene in shock. When Feng Wuing appeared, they finally reacted, and all of them opened their mouths wide. Everyone was unhappy with Feng Wuing. However, even more people didn't like Yi Shiwen. This was especially true for the experts of the other races. They didn't want such a genius to emerge from the human race. After all, this wasn't necessarily good news for them. But what kind of rhythm was this? Yi Shiwen killed him with a single sword? This was too fast. Countless ways and possibilities of the fight between the two sides had spun in their mind. But they hadn't expected that it would end in such a manner. Feng Wuing, who had been incomparably arrogant a while ago, had been stabbed to death by Yi Shiwen's sword. This was a little too much. Especially many people who hoped to see the two of them fight to the point where both sides were injured. At this moment, they were even more depressed. This result was simply too subversive. Could it be that this Feng Wuing is just for show? Only at this level? This is simply too much. The experts of the Phoenix race are only at this level. Many people instantly started to make a ruckus. They had been waiting for 3 days, only to see such a ridiculous result. Look, something's wrong, something's wrong. Suddenly, someone noticed that Feng Wuing, who had been pierced by Yi Shiwen's sword, suddenly revealed a somewhat strange smile on his face. Then, his entire body began to crumble bit by bit, turning into sparks that filled the sky before disappearing. He disappeared. What kind of cultivation technique is this? It should be a kind of doppelganger. Yi Shiwen did not stab him at all just now. At this time, everyone began to make wild guesses. Just now, when the two of them exchanged blows, they did not clearly see what had happened at all, so at this time, they could only guess what had happened. A tyrannical divine sense swept over, trying to capture the figure of Feng Wuing in the void. Yi Shiwen was not as surprised as everyone thought he was. He just calmly withdrew the long sword in his hand. The moment when he pierced the sword, he had already realized that something was wrong. It was nothing for him. "You dodged quite quickly," Yi Shiwen said lightly. His tone was dull, domineering, and did not give in at all. Chapter 1682. This kid's aura isn't bad. At this time, an old Heaven Realm expert couldn't help but speak out. With his age and strength, he was indeed qualified to say that Yi Shiwen was this kid. That's right. From the beginning to the end, his domineering aura didn't lose to Feng Wuing at all. Feng Wuing always wanted to be domineering, but he was steadily suppressed by Yi Shiwen. From the beginning to the end, he couldn't gain the upper hand in the confrontation of aura. This kid isn't simple. Many people couldn't see what Yi Shiwen was doing, but for these old monsters, they could see it clearly and knew very well what he was doing. Sometimes, aura was also a terrifying thing. The so-called general trend, in front of the general trend, anyone who wanted to stop it was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. It was the same for a martial artist. Their aura couldn't be cut off. Many people could fight more and more smoothly after gaining the upper hand in the beginning. Opponents who might have been evenly matched could also be completely suppressed as the fight went on. This was the so-called hot hands. The higher the level of the martial artist, the more tyrannical their aura was. Competing with each other's aura was also an important part of a martial artist's battle. Suppressing each other's chi became the most important thing. Once one's chi was suppressed, one wouldn't be able to unleash their full strength, let alone unleash their full strength. It was extremely rare for one to be able to kill their way out of an adverse situation. Even among these heaven's prides, only a few could do it. And Yi Shiwen was one of these few. However, this didn't mean that he didn't know how to suppress the opponent's aura. From the beginning of the fight, he didn't give Feng Wuying any chance. Feng Wushuang's aura was domineering, so Yi Shiwen was even more domineering than him. A mountain couldn't accommodate two tigers. Under such a tyrannical aura, Yi Shiwen steadily suppressed Feng Wushuang's aura, causing him to be unable to release his domineering aura and could only be firmly suppressed. Humph! At this time, Feng Wuying's cold snort was like a thunderclap, exploding in the void. At this time, countless flames condensed behind Yi Shiwen, and instantly condensed into a figure behind Yi Shiwen. It was Feng Wuying. With your speed, you still want to fight me like this? Wishful thinking. He sneered, trying to attack Yi Shiwen's confidence. Let's give it a try then. As soon as his voice fell, Yi Shiwen's sword light had already arrived. The sword light traversed the vast sky, and the void collapsed instantly. The space here had been specially reinforced, but it still seemed inadequate in front of Yi Shiwen and Yi Shiwen. In a split second, he was already in front of Feng Wuying. Yi Shiwen's sword light pierced into Feng Wuying's body almost without any hindrance. It was extremely fast. Both sides were competing in speed, but it seemed like Yi Shiwen's speed was a notch higher. Flying in front of Yi Shiwen, Feng Wuying seemed to be unable to escape Yi Shiwen's eyes no matter what he did. Whoosh! In that instant, Yi Shiwen's sword light had already pierced through Feng Wuying's body. His entire body had already arrived in front of Feng Wuying, and the sword light had already pierced through Feng Wuying's head. Idiot, do you think I don't know? I'm just luring you into a trap. At this time, Feng Wuying's cold voice once again appeared behind Yi Shiwen. Suddenly, Yi Shiwen's heart was alarmed, and countless tyrannical auras suddenly spread out from Feng Wuying's body, which was right in front of him. Immediately after, a terrifying force swept out in an instant. Boom! An incomparably loud explosion sounded, and terrifying energy swept out. Feng Wuying's entire body suddenly exploded with a loud bang. A small mushroom cloud rose in the void, and at this time, Feng Wuying's figure finally appeared in the void. In the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint, another round of exchanges occurred. Many people who witnessed this scene were completely horrified. From the moment Yi Shiwen firmly suppressed Feng Wuying to the moment Feng Wuying counterattacked with such incisive means, using a doppelganger to deceive Yi Shiwen over, and then decisively exploding. The entire process of this exchange was but a flash of lightning. The frequency at which the two of them exchanged blows had indeed thoroughly shocked many people. So fast, these two people. Some people were already so shocked that they couldn't speak. Many people originally wanted to take advantage of their seniority and say a few words about the younger generation, but now that they saw the exchange between the two of them, they completely extinguished such thoughts. If they were to go up, they might not be able to handle the attacks of the two of them. Although the method was simple, it was the most effective method, and that was enough. Beishan Shui watched from afar, and his pupils contracted. Fast, too fast. Originally, he had already sensed the gap between him and the two of them, but when he saw the exchange between the two of them, he finally understood that the gap between him and the two of them seemed to be getting bigger and bigger, and it was not just a little big. It was extremely terrifying. Now that he had also stepped into the peak of the early stage of the celestial realm, He believed that his strength would not lose to the Phoenix sect. Now, it seemed that after a few months, Yi Shiwen's strength had entered an even more unfathomable stage, and Feng Wu-ying's strength was even more tyrannical to an unimaginable degree. And just as he was still in shock, a torrential light broke out from the mushroom cloud of explosion and directly condensed into a giant finger in the void. Heaven imprisonment style. Then Yi Shiwen's cold voice rang out from the void. Instantly, that finger of his seemed to have turned into a giant cage in the void, imprisoning the heavens, imprisoning the earth, imprisoning everything, and imprisoning the space. Beams of incomparably powerful light instantly formed a giant cage, enveloping Feng Wu-ying. If Feng Wu-ying was enveloped by it, it would really be hard for him to escape. However, there was an incomparably loud cry of a phoenix. Then, countless flames appeared from Feng Wu-ying's body, and these flames formed into a giant fire phoenix in the void. It opened its mouth wide, and instantly, a sky full of flames was spat out, forming a sky full of flames. Under the burning of his Nanming mythical fire, that shrouding finger instantly turned into ashes. His Nanming mythical fire was like a world-destroying fire, and anyone who tried to get close to it would be burned alive by the Nanming mythical fire. And at this moment, within that mushroom cloud, a figure broke through the powerful force, traversing horizontally. It was Yi Shiwen. His green robes were spotless, as if he wasn't affected by the explosion at all, and he casually dissipated the power of the explosion into nothingness. Before the crowd had time to marvel, they saw him walking out of the mushroom cloud of explosion. With just one step, he seemed to have crossed the gap between heaven and earth, and ascended to the heavens in a single step. In an instant, he was already behind Feng Wu-ying, and at this moment, the crowd finally saw a pair of golden wings directly spread out from his back. Compared to the pair of fire phoenix wings behind Feng Wu-ying, it was even more noble and mysterious. At this moment, looking at Yi Shiwen, he actually looked a little like an angel. When he was in the demon realm, he often relied on this trick to pretend to be a fallen angel. The wings on the back of both of them showed that their movement techniques were extraordinary. Yi Shiwen attacked calmly, but the sword light covered the entire sky. The Phoenix Sect's flames didn't show any weakness, and compared to Yi Shiwen's sword light, they weren't at a disadvantage. At this moment, it was time for both sides to compete in strength. Shwa! 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 Both of their figures clashed in the sky. At this moment, it was truly a battle of speed. Both of them used their speed to the extreme, tearing numerous afterimages in the sky. At the start, there were 10, 50, 100, hundreds. In the end, the whole sky was filled with the afterimages of their fight. Everyone was dazzled by the scene. Their eyes couldn't catch it at all. It was clear that one of the afterimages had just disappeared, and a new one had appeared. It was simply fast to the extreme. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, they wouldn't believe that with their age and strength, their speed could actually reach such a level. Even some celestial realm experts' expressions changed. Even they didn't have such speed. In other words, as long as their opponent wasn't each other, anyone at the same level wouldn't be a problem in front of them. This was because their speed was simply too fast, and normal people couldn't keep up with their speed at all. Moreover, most people could only maintain this speed for a short period of time. It was impossible to maintain this speed forever. No matter how strong one's body was, it would be very difficult to maintain this speed forever. It was very likely that the body would not be able to hold on halfway and completely collapse. This was also very likely. However, both of them possessed extraordinary healing technique. As a result, the battle seemed to be endless as they continued to charge forward and kill each other. In an instant, they exchanged 100 moves, 1,000 moves. The sound of explosions constantly rang out in the void. It was extremely terrifying. Fire Lotus World Annihilation. At this moment, Feng Wu-ying appeared from the void. At this moment, His illusory figures that filled the sky disappeared in an instant. He then pinched a complicated hand seal with both his hands, and countless flames spewed out from every single pore on his body. He looked like a man of fire at a glance. Countless flames were spat out from it, burning fiercely in the void, burning through everything and causing everything to collapse. After that, these flames gathered on top of his head and formed an incomparably gigantic flame lotus. It was incomparably beautiful, yet it brought along a destructive aura. Chapter 1683. This fire lotus seemed to carry the mission of destroying the world, as it emitted a destructive aura. Many people looked from afar and could feel the terrifying destructive power of this fire lotus. Voila! This fire lotus directly fell towards Yi Shiwen. It seemed slow, but it was actually very fast. In an instant, it had already flown across the sky and arrived in front of him. At this time, Yi Shiwen also moved. His eyes were exceptionally dignified, extremely solemn. World creation soared. He shouted loudly. Instantly, circles of brilliance swept out from his body and covered the entire sky. At this moment, the sky seemed to have disappeared. In the entire world, only he was left. Only he was like the god of creation. A sword light of creation bloomed. Everywhere it passed, everything started to awaken and appear. A world appeared with one sword. This was the power of creation. It was a terrifying power that was the exact opposite of the power of destruction that the world annihilation fire lotus brought. The sword light slashed the world annihilation fire lotus. Rumble! The dreadful collision produced endless brilliance. The tip of Yi Shiwen's sword light and the endless flame of the world-extinguishing flaming lotus surged with endless brilliance. A dreadful energy swept out from the point of collision, and swept out in all directions like a tsunami. Voila! A circle of terrifying tsunami-like power swept out. This brilliance covered the entire sky. It was as if the entire sky had disappeared in an instant. It completely disappeared. Everyone's eyes went blind and they couldn't see at all. Just as everyone was using their true essence to condense their eyes in an attempt to see clearly, they heard another loud roar, followed by an even larger explosion, and the aftermath swept over. Before the crowd could react, it seemed that the two sides had clashed again. Everyone was incomparably shocked. Was this the destructive power that a heaven realm initial stage could achieve? It was simply unimaginable. After a moment, everyone finally regained their vision and saw clearly what had happened. They saw Yi Shiwen retracting the sword light from the void. Then, he stepped on the tip of his toes and continuously retreated from the void. And in front of him, a huge bloody hole suddenly appeared in Feng Wu Ying's chest, blood continuously splattering out. Just now, in a split second, before anyone had time to react, Yi Shiwen, who was the first to react, had pierced through Feng Wu Ying with his sword. There was still some disbelief in his eyes. However, his body seemed to be completely out of control. Waves of terrifying flames swept out instantly, burning everything within 1,000 meters around him and revealing endless chaos. Feng Wu Ying stood tall above the chaos like a god of chaos. However, this god seemed to be in a rather sorry state at this moment. It was as if he had fallen into a disadvantageous position in the battle between Yi Shiwen and himself. What is going on? Weren't they evenly matched just now? Yeah, I didn't see it either. I don't know what's going on either. It's simply unimaginable. Many people didn't see what had happened at all. They didn't understand what had happened just now to actually make the situation turn out like this. This Yi Shiwen is so vicious. At this moment, a Heaven Realm old antique finally spoke. This was a peak Heaven Realm expert. From the beginning, he had seen the entire process of the battle. His entire face was filled with shock. Old man, what's going on? Why did it turn out like this? We didn't see anything at all just now. Yeah, old man, hurry up and tell us what's going on. Just now. That old antique finally opened his mouth and continued, in the instant that both sides attacked, in the instant that the explosion occurred, Yi Shiwen actually moved at that moment and passed through the center of the explosion. Then, while Feng Wuying was completely unprepared, he heavily injured him with one sword strike. What? How is that possible? Many people were instantly shocked and didn't dare believe it. How is that possible? Even an initial Heaven Realm expert would be blasted into nothingness by the aftermath of such a terrifying explosion. He wouldn't even be able to dodge in time, so how could he charge in? That's why I say that's the most ruthless part of his plan. None of you could have predicted that he would rush in like that, so he did what he did to catch Feng Wuying off guard. Feng Wuying was thinking the same thing, and that's why Yi Shiwen's sneak attack succeeded, said one of the old antiques. Impossible. Could it be that Yi Shiwen really isn't injured at all? Is his physical body really that terrifying? After all, he's only at the Heaven Realm. His physical body isn't that terrifying. Just now, I clearly saw that half of his physical body was blown off, and his flesh and blood splattered everywhere. But then he completely recovered in such a short period of time. He definitely has some impressive healing technique on him. Otherwise, he absolutely wouldn't be able to do it to such a degree. At this moment, another old antique with good eyesight spoke. His voice was filled with shock, and he obviously didn't expect that Yi Shiwen would actually dare to take such a risk. But what's the use of this? Even if he heavily injured Feng Wuying, isn't he also heavily injured? If that's the case, then he doesn't have an advantage. At this moment, someone said in confusion, "What's the use? Don't you know just from looking at the scene?" He retreated unscathed, but Feng Wuying was heavily injured by him. That old antique snorted coldly and said with disdain, as if he couldn't be bothered to explain further. Everyone looked at Yi Shiwen with incomparable shock even after listening to the explanations of these old fogies. Even if his physical cultivation was tyrannical, and even if he possessed an extraordinary holy healing technique, they couldn't help but think, would they have the courage to pass through the center of the explosion, and then launch a surprise attack on Feng Wuying if they were in his place? Many people thought about themselves, and they probably didn't have such courage, because the danger was just too great. Both sides went all out, and it was like the end of the world. Ordinary initial Heaven Realm experts would be instantly killed by the shockwaves of the explosion. Not to mention others, so they definitely wouldn't do that. At this moment, when they looked at Yi Shiwen again, they suddenly had a bone-chilling feeling. Such a ruthless person would scare others no matter what. They couldn't be said to be merciful, but they were ruthless to others. Who would dare to be so ruthless to themselves? That was simply impossible. Yi Shiwen frowned as he looked at Feng Wuying. He didn't expect that such a sword would actually not be able to kill him, and instead, it caused a restriction in his body to erupt. If he hadn't dodged quickly at the critical moment, he would probably have been burnt by that flame and heavily injured. At that time, if Feng Wuying seized the opportunity, then it would be a huge problem. Feng Wuying's strength was much stronger than he had imagined. Compared to Yi Shiwen, Feng Wuying was truly incomparably shocked. He was actually injured by Yi Shiwen. He was actually injured by Yi Shiwen. It was simply like a fantasy story. If someone told him that he would be injured by someone before, he would definitely not believe it. In reality, although he was firmly suppressed by Yi Shiwen in the previous exchange, he wasn't considered to be at a disadvantage, and there was no possibility of him being injured. But now this situation had happened, and it completely shocked him. The wound on his chest was recovering bit by bit. At this moment, he was also incomparably shocked. If it wasn't for the restriction erupting just in time to save his life, he would probably be killed on the spot by Yi Shiwen. He absolutely didn't doubt that Yi Shiwen had the intention to kill him. Even if he didn't, in a battle between experts like this, one move could be fatal. He absolutely wouldn't hold back at all. If he fell into a disadvantage, then only death would be waiting for him. Conversely, it was the same. If Yi Shiwen fell into a disadvantage, then he might really die in his hands. I didn't expect that you would actually injure me. I really almost died in your hands. Feng Wuying suddenly calmed down. He was completely different from the little impatience he had just now. At this moment, he had completely calmed down, as if victory was already in his hands. He glanced at Yi Shiwen indifferently. However, this is the end of the game. My true strength has just begun to show. He looked at Yi Shiwen and said, I really didn't expect that there would be a time when a giant would also be bitten by an ant. However, I won't give you such an opportunity again. In front of my true strength, you're nothing but an ant. He glanced at Yi Shiwen contemptuously. Suddenly, a powerful force swept out from his body. It was unknown how much more tyrannical it was compared to a moment ago. The wound on his chest was also recovering at a shocking speed. In just a short while it was more or less recovered. Even though it wasn't as fast as Yi Shiwen's recovery in a breath's time, it was still shocking enough. Heaven Realm Intermediate Stage. Oh my God! He actually stepped into the Heaven Realm Intermediate Stage. At this moment, someone suddenly reacted. This aura that was far stronger than the Heaven Realm Initial Stage burst out from his body. So he was actually suppressing his cultivation and didn't use all his strength. How terrifying! Even so, this kind of strength is enough to look down on everyone. Yi Shiwen is finished. No matter how strong he is, he can't fight against a Heaven Realm Intermediate Stage expert. Especially looking at him, he has clearly stepped into the peak of the Heaven Realm Intermediate Stage and is about to step into the late stage. Many people were stunned as they looked at the devil-like Feng Wuying in the sky. Chapter 1684. The initial Heaven Realm and the intermediate Heaven Realm was a very clear divide. If he was only at the initial Heaven Realm, then no matter how strong he was, he would just be one of the masses. Including Bailey E and the others, they were all at the peak of the initial Heaven Realm. Although there was a difference in strength, it wasn't that huge. But now that he had stepped into the intermediate Heaven Realm, it was completely different. There was a huge gap between him and Bailey E and the others. At the very least, until now, no one had heard of anyone in the younger generation who had stepped into the intermediate Heaven Realm. Although they didn't rule out the possibility that some people were hiding their strength, even so, the intermediate Heaven Realm was still a shocking result. Even those people who had high hopes for Yi Shiwen didn't say that they had high hopes for him now. Maybe Yi Shiwen had the strength to fight against an initial Heaven Realm expert, but he couldn't even fight against a middle Heaven Realm expert. The situation changed too quickly. Both sides seemed to be constantly displaying different strength. At this moment, whether Yi Shiwen, who had been suppressing Feng Wuying, could continue or not became the focus of everyone's attention. Voila! At this moment, Feng Wuying finally made his move. His first move was a sky full of Nanmingli fire. The strength that was trapped in his body could finally be released without restraint. It was extremely terrifying. Boundless air waves swept in all directions. Many of the spectators couldn't hide the shock in their eyes. Compared to before, Feng Wuying's move was several times stronger. It couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as before. These flames soared into the sky and turned into an incomparably huge fire phoenix. It was vivid and lifelike, as if it was a real phoenix. It swept up in the sky and spat out countless flames, which turned into many weapons. The flaming light shot towards Yi Shiwen. However, when the radiance of these weapons came within 3 feet of Yi Shiwen, a scroll suddenly appeared above Yi Shiwen's head. The earth, water, and fire deities occupied the scroll and joined hands to arrange a huge wall. These flaming weapons bombarded this huge wall, and there was a faint sound of an incomparably loud explosion. However, without exception, they couldn't blast into Yi Shiwen's body. Each exploding weapon light was comparable to the full-powered strike of an initial celestial realm expert. At this moment, the ripples of the explosion tore open numerous space cracks and exploded all around. So powerful! After breaking the restriction, Feng Wuying's strength isn't just a little bit stronger than before. Now, he can casually release hundreds of attacks that required him to use his full strength before. It's simply unbelievable. He's as majestic as the flame god. What's more terrifying is that Yi Shiwen. From the very beginning, he's firmly suppressed Feng Wuying. No matter how much strength he uses, he can't seem to escape from Yi Shiwen's control. He's been completely suppressed. Just this point alone is enough to make Yi Shiwen incredible. That's right. Look, no matter how Feng Wuying attacks, he can't break through Yi Shiwen's defense. What kind of magic tool is that in his hand? How can it be so powerful? Is it a pinnacle ultimate weapon? Someone exclaimed. Ordinary people could only see that this was a peak spirit tool. However, those old antiques were even more astonished because they could also see that Yi Shiwen's 5 elements Qian Yuan diagram was clearly an incomplete divine tool. It was only an incomplete divine tool, but it was already able to display the power of a peak spirit tool. If it was restored to its peak, then what kind of scene would it be? At the very least, it would surpass the existence of a spirit tool. At this time, some of the old guys also revealed a bit of greed in their eyes. If Yi Shiwen didn't have any background at this time, perhaps they would have already taken action to snatch it. In the past, every time this kind of magic tool appeared, it would cause a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, a rain of blood and foul wind. It's useless, Feng Wuying. You can't break through my defense. Behind this wall, Yi Shiwen stood steadily. At this moment, he was completely different. On top of his head, a noble Taoist crown appeared. It was incomparably noble and had an incomparably mysterious ability. This was the magical power that came after refining the water element, the Water Lord crown. On his body, an earthy yellow robe with incomparably deep energy was faintly discernible. It was the Earth Robe. Yi Shiwen's tyrant body was extremely tyrannical. Moreover, his 7-colored divine robe, Water Lord's crown, Earth Robe, and other defensive items had turned him into a mobile fortress. It was simply impossible to break his defense. Let's see how much longer you can hide your head like a tortoise. Feng Wuying snorted coldly. His eyes flashed with a sharp light. His magical power of fire was boundless and possessed terrifying destructive power. It was like an indestructible spear. On the other hand, the various defenses on Yi Shiwen's body were like the strongest shield. This was a contradictory battle. Do you think that I can't do anything to you just because you have a tortoise shell on your head? Feng Wuying snorted coldly. Nothing can survive in my flames. As he spoke, he pinched a hand seal. The power that filled the sky suddenly erupted. Then, endless flame characters started burning in the void. Everything was burned in the flames. It seemed as if there were countless phoenixes dancing in the flames. It seemed as if this place had become the ancient Phoenix world and the Phoenix Kingdom. What a big move. He wants to turn the heaven and earth into a pot and then burn Yi Shiwen alive. At this time, there were also people who understood the situation. They immediately looked at Feng Wuying with incomparable astonishment and said, "It's a big move, but it's hard to say how long he can last." There were also people who were not optimistic about it. The real elemental energy consumed in this is an astronomical figure. No matter how profound his skills are, I'm afraid that he won't be able to last. Moreover, with the power of Yi Shiwen's magic tool, I'm afraid there's no way to break through his defense. What kind of eyesight did everyone have? It seemed as if they could see through Feng Wuying's actual situation at a glance. They judged that Feng Wuying might not be able to continue like this. Yi Shiwen didn't move an inch. The flames that filled the sky were blocked by his Ho-Tu robe and Water Monarch crown. It seemed as if they couldn't cause him any trouble at all. Let's see how long you can last. He looked at Feng Wuying coldly. At this time, both sides seemed to be competing in endurance. Humph. When Feng Wuying heard the discussion of the crowd, he revealed a slight smile at the corner of his mouth, as if he was mocking their stupidity. At this time, he took out a crystal from his bosom. This crystal had just appeared when it turned into a 7-colored phoenix that was about to fly away. However, Feng Wuying opened his mouth directly. An unparalleled suction was emitted from his mouth. The 7-colored phoenix that was about to fly away was instantly sucked in by him. Boom! At this time, the aura on Feng Wuying's body skyrocketed again. There were signs of instability on his body, but now it had completely stabilized. There was a continuous feeling of incomparable strength. What is that? Could it be some elixir that replenishes real elemental energy? That's possible. I've never seen it before. Everyone was shocked. Even these experienced and knowledgeable old fellows didn't know what was being swallowed by Feng Wuying. After all, the ancient Phoenix domain had been far away from the ancient Baron's continent for too long. It had been so long that the truth of many things had been buried in the dust of history. No one really knew what the truth was. It's not worth it, it's not worth it. Just when everyone was incomparably shocked, an old voice was heard. At this time, a figure appeared from the void. It was an old man in a fiery robe. He looked extremely old, but he had an indescribable sense of nobility that ordinary people couldn't describe. This 7-colored phoenix heart is supposed to be used when one is about to break through to the peak heaven paragon realm. Now that it's used at this time, what's the use even if he steps into the late heaven paragon realm? He's already not far from the late heaven paragon realm. It's just a waste to use it like this. The old man sighed and said, 7-colored phoenix heart. This is the legendary 7-colored phoenix heart? It's indeed magical. At this time, the big shots of various forces who had been paying attention to this matter all exclaimed. In the ancient books of their sects and forces, these were all good things that were listed on the list. It's rumored that the 7-colored phoenix heart can only be produced in the ancient Phoenix domain. Once swallowed, one can break through immediately. In other words, this Feng Wuying is about to step into the late heaven paragon realm. Yi Shiwen is really done for. Everyone was shocked, especially some of the big shots of the human clan. At this moment, they looked at Yi Shiwen, who was in the void, with incomparable worry. Yi Shiwen could firmly suppress Feng Wuying in the initial stage of the heaven realm, and he could also fight against the intermediate stage of the heaven realm without falling into a disadvantageous position. With his cultivation of the 8th level of the heaven realm, it was already shocking enough. However, facing Feng Wuying, who could step into the late heaven paragon realm, what could he use to fight against him? Ha ha ha, it's useless. Yi Shiwen, for you, I even swallowed the 7-colored phoenix heart in advance. I'm about to step into the late heaven paragon realm. At that time, no matter how powerful you are, you will only be refined by me and burned to death. No one will be able to save you. Feng Wuying couldn't help but smile proudly. In this battle, he was completely suppressed by Yi Shiwen from start to end. The grievance in his heart was simply indescribable. At this time, he could finally get back at Yi Shiwen for everything. Fool, step into the late heaven paragon realm? That depends on whether you have the chance. Today, I'll let you see what it means to work hard for others. Chapter 1685. The aura on Feng Wuying's body was still increasing bit by bit, as if he could step into the celestial realm late stage at any time. His hair danced in the wind, as if he was an overlord. It was as if he could break through at any time, revealing a sense of danger. Fool, step into the celestial realm late stage? That depends on whether you have the chance to do so. Today, I will let you see what it means to work hard for others. Yi Shiwen suddenly opened his mouth and said, What? Feng Wuying was stunned, not knowing what Yi Shiwen was talking about. However, he didn't take it to heart. In the situation where he was about to step into the celestial realm late stage, all of Yi Shiwen's struggles were meaningless. There's no need to struggle, Feng Wuying sneered and said. In his eyes, Yi Shiwen pinched a complicated seal, and circles of real elemental energy swept out from his body like a river, and directly poured into the 5 elements Qian Yuan diagram. Suddenly, endless divine light burst out from the 5 elements Qian Yuan diagram, covering the entire sky in an instant, as if it was going to devour everything. And at this moment, in the void, a huge fiery red figure condensed. Standing on the 5 elements Qian Yuan diagram, it was a god formed from the fire element. It roared towards the sky, and the entire sky shook. Then, the fire god opened its bloody mouth and swallowed half of the flames in one gulp. The endless flames all fell into the fire god's body at once. Boom! Immediately after, endless power began to boil in the body of this fire god. It expanded all of a sudden, as if it was going to burst his body in an instant. His entire stomach felt as though it was about to burst. Next, it shrunk back bit by bit. It was as though all the power had been refined by this fire god. Every time this fire god refined a bit more power, he would grow a bit taller. Very soon, the flaming god that was originally more than 3 meters tall instantly doubled in size, growing to more than 6 meters tall. Furthermore, he was no longer just a naked man of fire. At this moment, his expression had also become clearer. Dressed in a flaming imperial robe, he was like a flame monarch. In the 5 elements Qian Yuan diagram, this was the fire emperor of the 5 emperors. Other than that, there was also the water god, earth emperor, metal emperor, and wood emperor. However, currently, only the embryonic form of the 3 emperors had been condensed, and it was not complete. If he completely condensed the 5 emperors, it could be said that all of the 5 elements' magical martial arts would be completely restrained by him. In the past, 5 elements supreme had relied on this unique technique to dominate the world. Compared to the Fire Emperor who had already grown to more than 6 feet tall, the other Water God and Earth Emperor were only a little more than 3 feet tall, and were still in the embryonic form. Now, the 5 elements had basically lost balance, and the Metal Emperor and Wood Emperor had not condensed. However, this was not a big deal. Anyway, when the time came, the balance would be restored. How is this possible? My Nanming Li fire can burn everything in the world. How could it be devoured by you? Feng Wuying looked at the more than 3 feet tall Fire Emperor in disbelief. Moreover, this Fire Emperor was still constantly devouring the Nanming Li fire, as if it was not the most terrifying fire in the world, but soft candy, and it did not have the slightest intention of stopping. What kind of magic is this? Many people were horrified when they saw this scene. Even the Nanming Li fire could not do anything to this Fire Emperor, which was too terrifying. That is the magic of the 5 element. What a powerful celestial device. I'm afraid it is far more than just a simple celestial device. Many people could see that this Fire Emperor, which could devour the world, was condensed by the 5 elements Qian Yuan diagram. With their strength, they thought for a moment and realized that this might be a celestial device of the 5 elements, and a celestial device of all 5 elements. This was the most terrifying thing. Only having 5 elements, no matter how powerful it was, could only be restrained by the other 5 elements. However, this kind of celestial device of the 5 elements could not be restrained at all, because the 5 elements and the 5 elements reinforced and restrained each other, forming a cycle, so there was no way to restrain it. In other words, this kind of celestial device with all 5 elements was the most terrifying, or at least, all celestial devices within the 5 elements would be completely restrained by it. It was not that they had not seen celestial devices with all 5 elements, but they were generally ordinary 5 elements. They had never seen one that could even devour the power of the 5 elements as if it was cotton candy. Even many powerful big shots were incomparably horrified at this time, even they did not have such a celestial device. However, it was still gratifying that this celestial device seemed to have not been refined, or it had been severely damaged. Therefore, among the 5 elements, it only had the 3 elements of fire, water, and earth, and it was not balanced. Now it seemed that the power of the Fire Emperor had obviously suppressed the power of the other 2 elements. Seeing that Yi Shiwen could actually overcome the damage of the Nanmingli fire, many people suddenly changed their perception of him. Perhaps he could counterattack. No matter how powerful Feng Wuying became, as long as he was still using the magic of the fire attribute, he would be restrained by Yi Shiwen. This time, the battle situation suddenly became complicated and confusing. In a short while, the Fire Emperor had devoured the Nanmingli fire that filled the sky, and his figure had also skyrocketed to a height of 10 meters. Yi Shiwen looked at Feng Wuying indifferently to see what other tricks he had. The Nanmingli fire was not an ordinary flame that could be released as much as he wanted. This kind of heterogeneous flame had to be nurtured by himself. Yi Shiwen, who also had Nanmingli fire in his body, was very clear about this, so he would not waste it for no reason. Even if the Phoenix clan was talented and this was an innate magic, it could not be endless. At this time, if he had any Nanmingli fire, he could let the Fire Emperor devour all of them. At that time, the Fire Emperor would truly grow and complete the transformation. Whoosh! Endless Nanmingli fire emerged from Feng Wuying's body and swept towards Yi Shiwen once again. This time, it was several times more terrifying than before. Ha 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 ha, I didn't expect you to have a 5 elements magic tool. However, it's a joke if you want to exhaust me with this move. I've just devoured the 7-colored phoenix heart. My power is boundless at this moment. I'd like to see whether you'll die first, or my power will be exhausted first. Yi Shiwen suddenly felt an even more terrifying flame blotting out the sky and covering the earth. Compared to before, it was much more terrifying. He quickly put away the Fire Emperor. He could not let the Fire Emperor continue to devour. Although the Fire Emperor could devour all the heterogeneous flames, it could not exceed his limit. It was impossible to devour all the heterogeneous flames in one go. Otherwise, the entire Fire Emperor would explode on the spot. He hadn't thought it through enough. He hadn't thought that he would actually devour the 7-colored phoenix heart. At this time, his power was almost endless. It wasn't worth it to waste time with him. Immediately, he gave up on the idea of continuing to compete with him in this aspect. On top of his head, the 5 elements Qian Yuan diagram constantly burst out with powerful rays of light, protecting him within it. When I break into the late stage of the celestial being realm, it will be the time of your death. Feng Wuying roared continuously and controlled the Nanmingli fire. He was simply like an angry and violent fire god. Boundless Nanmingli fire was produced from his body. What was terrifying? This was terrifying. Many people looked from afar and their expressions changed. If they were touched by the Nanmingli fire, it would be a dead end. If it wasn't Yi Shiwen, who was a freak, but an ordinary person, he would have been burned alive at this time. Even if it was just a little bit of Nanmingli fire, he would definitely be burned alive and become a roasted suckling pig. Late stage of the celestial being realm? Do you think you still have a chance? Yi Shiwen shouted. In the 5 elements Qian Yuan diagram, the Fire Emperor flew out and possessed his body. Then, his entire aura rose by several levels and swept out in circles. He was brave and invincible as he directly rushed into the sea of fire that filled the sky. After the Nanmingli fire fell directly on his body, it was absorbed by the Fire Emperor on the surface of his body. It could not cause any harm to him at all. Although it was impossible for the Fire Emperor to absorb all the Nanmingli fire, it was just absorbing it bit by bit. There was no problem at all. Whoosh! Yi Shiwen's figure distorted in the void and disappeared in an instant. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Feng Wuying. Clang! With a sound, the sword light swept out. The sword light traversed the sky and expanded with the wind. It grew bigger and bigger as it slashed down towards Feng Wuying. Bang! An incomparably loud sound was heard as Yi Shiwen's sword light fiercely landed on the phoenix on top of Feng Wuying's head. Sparks splashed in all directions, and countless flames were extinguished by Yi Shiwen's sword light. On Feng Wuying's body, the originally expanding aura suddenly seemed to be cut off by something. It stopped for a moment, and for the first time, it did not rise anymore. Damn it! Feng Wuying let out a loud roar and wanted to pounce towards Yi Shiwen. At this moment, Yi Shiwen's second sword followed closely and directly slashed down. Boom! An even louder roar rang out, bringing with it an explosion that filled the sky. It swept out and annihilated countless Nanmingli fires. It also blew up the space, and an endless amount of chaos poured out all at once. Want to ascend to the celestial realm late stage? Dream on! Yi Shiwen's cold voice was still ringing in their ears. Chapter 1686. You want to enter the celestial realm late stage? Dream on! Yi Shiwen's aura was violent and cold, like a demon god, not giving others any chance at all. Feng Wuying wanted to rely on his rising aura to charge into the peak of the celestial realm late stage, but at this moment, how would Yi Shiwen give him that chance? He knew his own strength. If Feng Wuying was only at the celestial realm intermediate stage, he might still have a way to deal with him. But once he entered the celestial realm late stage, then he would be out of his reach. So, the only conclusion was that he definitely couldn't let him enter the celestial realm late stage. Boom! Yi Shiwen's sword light slashed down once again, and an even more terrifying sword aura swept down. It was fast and vicious, slashing down on the body of the fire phoenix. The fire phoenix that was formed from countless Nanmingli fire had a huge crack on it, and it was almost slashed apart by Yi Shiwen's sword. Without waiting for Feng Wuying to react, the sword slashed down once more. Boom! 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 A series of loud explosions rang out. Feng Wuying's originally rising aura was completely suppressed by Yi Shiwen, and his aura was being suppressed bit by bit. How is this possible? The old man of the Phoenix clan also opened his eyes wide at this time. He was completely frightened by Yi Shiwen's wild behavior as he looked at the scene in front of him. And most importantly, as Yi Shiwen continued to slash down, Feng Wuying's aura that was about to enter the celestial realm late stage was completely suppressed. This was the so-called power of momentum. If it went smoothly, it would be like a hot knife through butter. But on the contrary, if the momentum was blocked, then everything would start to go awry. Even things like breaking through could be stopped. Originally, no one thought that Yi Shiwen could be Yi Shiwen's opponent, because once he entered the celestial realm late stage, his strength would be completely above Yi Shiwen's. In particular, these old guys with sharp eyes could see that Yi Shiwen had already displayed his full strength. In other words, Yi Shiwen should have reached his limit, excluding some of his trump cards. Once Feng Wuying broke through, it would be a disaster for Yi Shiwen. Many people thought that he would admit defeat on the spot. After all, he was only at the Heaven Realm. To be able to fight against Heaven Realm experts until now was already out of everyone's expectations. With such a battle record, it was enough for him to be ranked at the top of the most tyrannical young geniuses, so it wasn't shameful for him to admit defeat at this time. On the other hand, even if Feng Wuying won this time, it wouldn't be considered glorious. After all, his realm was several levels higher than Yi Shiwen's. But no one thought that Yi Shiwen would actually use such a method to completely interrupt Feng Wuying's advancement, completely suppressing Feng Wuying's aura. When breaking through, it just so happened that one needed an unstoppable aura to be able to completely ignore everything and break through to a whole new realm. If one's aura was suppressed, then it wouldn't be easy to gather it again. It was like the morale of an army in battle. Without morale, then no matter how many people there were, they were just a bunch of pigs waiting to be slaughtered. He actually has such a method. As expected of a daring guy who even dared to steal the Kuan Pring egg. At this time, in a courtyard, the Jiuying demon king spoke, his eyes overflowing with murderous intent. But this is only the glory for a moment. In a moment you will die without a burial place. Because the people who were sent to steal the Kuan Pring egg had all died in the mouth of the Kuan Pring. He had no news of the Kuan Pring egg at all. If it wasn't for the fact that the young Kuan Pring was discovered, he would definitely continue to be suspicious. At this time, an old antique spoke up. If he can successfully stop Feng Wuying's advancement, then Feng Wuying will definitely lose this time. But Feng Wuying has devoured the seven-colored phoenix heart. How can he be stopped so easily? The seven-colored phoenix heart only grows in the ancient phoenix realm. It's a special treasure of heaven and earth. After devouring the seven-colored phoenix heart, there's almost a 100% chance of advancement. In fact, if he's a shocking genius, he might directly rush all the way to the peak of the celestial realm. When that time comes, Yi Shiwen will definitely die. At this time, the people present at the scene were divided into two camps. Some people felt that Yi Shiwen could successfully stop Feng Wuying, and thus defeat him. However, more people felt that Feng Wuying was unstoppable. How could it be so easy to stop Feng Wuying, who had devoured the heart of the seven-colored phoenix? But no matter what they said, the shocking battle between the two continued. Yi Shiwen was expressionless. The angel's sword in his hand had already expanded in the wind. It was dozens of feet long, like a pillar supporting the heavens, and it continuously slashed down. Every sword cut through the sky, cutting everything in its path. The cracks swept through everything, following the direction of the sword's tip, sweeping towards Feng Wuying. Boom! 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 Every time Feng Wuying wanted to break through and increase his aura, he would be slashed down by Yi Shiwen's sword and be crushed, disappearing into nothingness. Roar! Feng Wuying roared continuously. His face was red. He had never been so sullen before. He was completely suppressed by Yi Shiwen. At this time, the terrifying energy transformed from the seven-colored phoenix heart was wreaking havoc in his body, but he had no way to vent it at all. Originally, he could use it to break through to the late stage of the celestial realm. But now there was no way at all. Every time he tried to break through, he would be suppressed by Yi Shiwen's sword. This was the real difficulty of making a breakthrough, because your opponent would not give you such an opportunity. For many warriors, they might not even have a chance to make a breakthrough in their lifetime. But for people like Yi Shiwen, making a breakthrough in a battle was not a simple matter. Most of the time, they had to go through a narrow escape from death, and most of the time, they had to be lucky to be able to make a breakthrough. It's useless. Don't struggle. Although I can't completely eliminate the energy of your seven-colored phoenix heart and prevent you from breaking through, I can still delay your breakthrough by a few days or even a few months. Yi Shiwen was cold and emotionless. He even used words to attack Feng Wuying, trying to disrupt his state of mind and rhythm. If it was under normal circumstances, this move would be useless. Facing Feng Wuying's perfect state of mind, there was no way for him to attack. But now, Feng Wuying's aura was constantly being suppressed by Yi Shiwen. He was extremely anxious and had long revealed flaws. Hurry up and wake up. Don't be fooled by him. There is no benefit in fighting with him at this time. As long as you advance to the late stage of the celestial realm, he will be an ant for you to deal with. At this time, the elder of the Phoenix clan finally couldn't stand it anymore and reminded. Shameless! How can you speak at this time? It turns out that the Phoenix clan is also so shameless. Suddenly, a burst of ridicule came. But at this time, the elder of the Phoenix clan couldn't stand it anymore. He couldn't care less about the ridicule of others. Compared to the fall of a peerless genius of the Phoenix clan, a mere ridicule was nothing. This sentence was very normal to others, but to Feng Wuying, it was like a stick to his head, waking him up in an instant. That's right, why did he have to go against Yi Shiwen? There was no need at all. As long as he stepped into the late stage of the celestial realm, Yi Shiwen would definitely die. Wasn't this his own wish? Although at this time it was more or less showing weakness, but he didn't have so many scruples. The possibility of losing to Yi Shiwen was a problem that he didn't want to face the most. He could lose to anyone but Yi Shiwen. He wanted to prove to her who was the one who was most worthy of her in the world, and not this mere human with a mortal bloodline. In order to achieve this goal, he even consumed a heavenly treasure like the 7-colored phoenix heart in advance. Originally, he planned to consume it after he reached the peak of the celestial realm and wanted to break through to a higher realm. He had even consumed the 7-colored phoenix heart. It was just a mere pride. What else couldn't he give up? Thinking of this, he immediately leaped up and stomped on the ground with the tip of his foot. His body instantly swept backward, tearing a trail of flame shadows in the void. At this time, the elder saw that Feng Wuying still listened to him in the end and didn't choose to fight head-on. He nodded his head in relief. As for the ridicule of others, he didn't take it to heart at all. What was a mere face? A lifetime was very long. A momentary victory or defeat didn't mean anything. He even felt that using the 7-colored phoenix heart to defeat Yi Shiwen was a huge loss. So what if he defeated him? Even if he killed him, could he make up for the loss of the 7-colored phoenix heart? The leaders of the other forces all nodded their heads. A momentary victory or defeat and pride didn't mean anything. History would only remember the victor, and the key to the victory or defeat between the two was whether Feng Wuying could step into the late stage of the celestial realm. If he could, Yi Shiwen would definitely lose. If he couldn't, Feng Wuying would definitely lose. It was that simple. In the middle stage of the celestial realm, Feng Wuying was completely suppressed by Yi Shiwen. His greatest trump card, the Nanmingli Fire, just had to meet a monster like Yi Shiwen. Not only was he not afraid, but he would also become his nourishment. You want to leave? How can I let you leave? Yi Shiwen shouted and took a step forward. So close, yet worlds apart, he instantly caught up to Feng Wuying. This time I will completely defeat you. Chapter 1687. This time, I want you to be completely defeated. Yi Shiwen's indifferent voice sounded. Feng Wuying's speed was very fast, but Yi Shiwen's speed was even faster. It could be said that he was like a shadow, instantly appearing in front of Feng Wuying, not giving him any room to recover. Clang! The sword light spun rapidly above Yi Shiwen's head. It could no longer be seen clearly, only a terrifying sword-light tornado could be seen. Under the control of Yi Shiwen's mind, it instantly swept towards Feng Wuying. Feng Wuying was just about to break away from Yi Shiwen's attack and get a chance to catch his breath. Who knew that Yi Shiwen would instantly catch up with him, not giving him any chance at all. At this time, he could only resist with all his might. Heavenly Phoenix Septet! Feng Wuying roared continuously. The terrifying sound turned into circles of sound waves, spreading in all directions, forming a sharp attack. Boom! Yi Shiwen's sword light collided with Feng Wuying's Heavenly Phoenix Septet. The sword light tornado was blocked in mid-air, bursting with countless shocking lights. These sound waves in the void turned into huge phoenixes, covering the sky and earth as they pounced towards Yi Shiwen. Clang! Yi Shiwen's angel sword in his hand suddenly shot out, bursting with a terrifying light, and instantly slashed down. Poochie! 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 Yi Shiwen's sword light was like a hot knife through butter, directly breaking through dozens of huge phoenixes. But it was useless. More sound waves turned into phoenixes and swept over. It could almost be said to be densely packed, covering the sky and earth. And Feng Wuying hid behind those phoenixes, his face cold, the aura on his body finally continued to rise without any hindrance. Just a little more. Just a little more, Yi Shiwen, you're dead? He looked at Yi Shiwen and his eyes flickered. A terrifying light flashed in his eyes. His aura continued to rise, and he was really just a step away from the late stage of the celestial realm. Just a little more, you're dead. Feng Wuying roared. The one who's dead is you. At this time, Yi Shiwen's cold voice suddenly came from all directions. Whoosh! His figure suddenly appeared in front of Feng Wuying, less than 10 feet away. Impossible! Feng Wuying's eyes were slowly filled with shock. How did Lin Fan pass through the layers of phoenixes and arrive before him? Suddenly, he noticed that all the phoenixes in the sky had started to burn. In an instant, the countless phoenixes in the sky seemed to have been ignited and were burning up completely. In front of the terrifying Nan Mingli fire, the entire space was burned to ashes by the Nan Mingli fire. The Nanming mythical fire didn't seem to have much power in Feng Wuying's hands. However, it seemed to have displayed a shocking might in Yi Shiwen's hands at this time. It burned his phoenix cleanly in one move. In other words, Yi Shiwen's speed was too fast. So, the phoenixes that filled the sky were burnt to ashes after he appeared. Bang! A loud bang resounded. While he was still in a state of shock, he suddenly discovered that Yi Shiwen's sword light had already penetrated his chest without him noticing. While he was in a daze, Yi Shiwen had already attacked. He used his voice to attract the last bit of Feng Wuying's vigilance, and as he spoke, he made his move. He was fast, accurate, and ruthless. Yi Shiwen's rich battle experience over the years was displayed to the fullest in this attack. Pfft! He spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire body drew a parabola in the sky, and then fell hard on the ground, creating a huge pit. He was defeated in an instant. His eyes were filled with shock. In that instant, he was dazed for a moment, and Yi Shiwen grasped the opportunity. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to hold on for so long. Although Yi Shiwen was strong, he couldn't completely suppress him. But now, he was defeated with one sword. Although he hadn't completely lost his battle strength, he knew that he had lost. His aura was completely destroyed by Yi Shiwen's sword, and he couldn't break into the celestial realm late stage in one go. He definitely couldn't beat Yi Shiwen in this battle, and there was no point in struggling. Thinking about how he still wasn't Yi Shiwen's match after devouring the 7-colored phoenix heart, he was extremely depressed. He couldn't help but spit out another mouthful of blood. I hate it! Feng Wuying roared. At this moment, he deeply understood what it meant by, if there's a genius, there's also a genius. Since he already had such talent, why did Yi Shiwen have to appear? Lost, Feng Wuying lost. After a long time, someone finally reacted. Although both sides had changed several times since the beginning of the battle, and Yi Shiwen had slowly gained the upper hand, more and more people had begun to accept that Yi Shiwen might be able to win. However, everyone was still incomparably shocked when they saw Yi Shiwen cripple Feng Wuying with a single sword strike. From the start, they wanted to see if Yi Shiwen could break through under the pressure of Feng Wuying. Later on, everyone wanted to know if Feng Wuying would step into the celestial realm late stage and counterattack. But until the end, he wasn't able to counterattack. Under Yi Shiwen's merciless storm-like attacks, Feng Wuying was completely defeated in the end. What a pity! I thought that Feng Wuying might be able to counterattack. What a pity, just a little bit more. Just a little bit more, it's so close yet worlds apart. As expected, it's not that easy to break through in the middle of a battle. How could others give you such a chance? Many people couldn't help but sigh. This Yi Shiwen has been silent for 10 years, but he's amazing with a single brilliant feat. The Yi family is really lucky recently. First, Yi Shukong appeared out of nowhere, and now, Yi Shiwen swept through the crowd. These two can be said to be peerless geniuses, comparable to the 5 giants of the younger generation. Could it be that they found some ancestral vein? Otherwise, how could their luck suddenly increase so much? Someone said with a sigh. Glory, he's glory now, but it's a pity that this is just his last struggle. In the end, only death awaits him. Someone seemed to know something and sneered. And just as Yi Shiwen was about to retract his aura, suddenly, a figure broke through the sky and appeared in front of Yi Shiwen. You're Yi Shiwen? This was a peerless and domineering figure, a peerless hero. Jiuying Monster King. Yi Shiwen's pupils suddenly contracted. He would never forget this figure for the rest of his life. It was the figure of the overlord who fought against the Kuan Peng. You really do recognize me, the Jiuying Monster King said in a low voice. So, it's true that the Kuan Peng is in your hands? That's right. Yi Shiwen steadied his breath and calmed down. He knew that the news of the young Kuan Peng might have spread since the last time it was exposed in front of everyone. At that time, there were so many people, including the 100 Races Alliance and the Phoenix Sect, so it was impossible to keep the news under wrap. Now, the Jiuying Monster King was indeed here for the young Kuan Peng. After all, when he fought against the Kuan Peng, he also sent people to seize the Kuan Peng egg. Yi Shiwen could be said to be snatching food from the tiger's mouth. Although they did not die by Yi Shiwen's hands in the end, but were buried in the Kuan Peng's mouth, who would care? How dare you? The Jiuying Monster King said. Do you know what the Kuan Peng means to the demon race? It's the demon master lineage of the demon race. How dare you? Monster King, you must be joking. I remember that you were eager for him to die before, and you even did it yourself, weren't you? A disdainful smile flashed across Yi Shiwen's mouth. There was a hint of mockery in it. If not for the Jiuying Monster King, he would not have had the chance to obtain the Kuan Peng egg. Now, he wanted to talk about the relationship between the Kuan Peng and the demon race. No matter how one looked at it, it was like burying one's head in the sand. Didn't he find it funny? What a sharp-tongued kid. Your talent is not bad, but it's a pity that you're going to die here. However, I'm not the only one who wants you dead today. The Jiuying Monster King did not care about Yi Shiwen's mockery and said calmly. Even I didn't expect that you would offend so many people, and it seems like none of them are ordinary people. That's right, he must die. At this time, the figure of an old man quietly appeared in the void. It was the old man from the ancient Phoenix realm. He was the special envoy of the ancient Phoenix realm, and his strength was unimaginably deep. Yi Shiwen was instantly shocked. He didn't know what was going on, but the Jiuying Monster King and the ancient Phoenix realm's special envoy both wanted him dead. Speaking of which, he had defeated Feng Wuying, which was definitely a glorious achievement. However, in the eyes of these big shots who controlled the entire ancient Baron's continent, he was just a junior. When his strength caught up, he would then be on equal footing with them. Previously, there were no signs at all. The Jiuying Monster King hated him, and he understood that it was natural. Not only did his hard work go to Yi Shiwen, but more importantly, when the Kuan Peng went berserk, it wreaked havoc in the territory of the Jiuying clan. Under the leadership of the Kuan Peng, several demonic beast kings wreaked havoc. Although it wasn't Yi Shiwen's doing, it definitely had something to do with him. However, it wasn't strange for him to do so. In that case, what was the special envoy of the ancient Phoenix realm doing? Could it be because he defeated Feng Wuying? At this time, countless possibilities flashed through Yi Shiwen's mind. Chapter 1688. Count me in as well. Suddenly, another tyrannical and peerless figure crossed over the boundary. An unprecedentedly powerful imposing aura directly locked Yi Shiwen in place, and firmly fixed him in place. He killed my puppet. I can't let this go. Yi Shiwen suddenly remembered that this should be the real patriarch of the North Mountain clan. He didn't expect that what he had done a long time ago would suddenly erupt now. Under the crushing aura of the three peerless overlords, Yi Shiwen's forehead was densely covered in cold sweat. The bones in his body also seemed to be under great pressure, making cracking sounds. Yi Shiwen's gaze looked below the planet, at the gathering place of the human race. Could the human overlords just watch this happen? You don't need to look at them. This time, your Yi clan can't save you. The Jiuying Demon King said coldly. Your Yi clan is only a marquee clan at most. How can you compare to us? Yi Shiwen glanced around. The Yi clan could indeed be regarded as a giant among the human race. However, they were facing 3 overlords. One was the Demon King of the Jiuying clan, one of the top 10 demon kings of the demon race. The other was the Patriarch of the North Mountain clan, one of the top 10 royal clans of the 100-clan alliance. The last one was the special envoy of the ancient Phoenix realm. Any one of them had the qualifications to be on equal footing with the human king, let alone the insignificant Yi clan. Yi Shiwen, you'd better surrender. You should know that for the human race, no one can't be sacrificed. You are no exception. At this time, another figure descended from the sky. He was wearing a red robe and was as dazzling as the sun. No one could look directly at him. It was impossible to see his appearance clearly. One could only hear from his voice that he was a majestic middle-aged man. Sun King, Yi Shiwen said. Although he had never seen him before, he had heard of him countless times. He was one of the 4 great kings of the imperial court, the Sun King. Although he was not as invincible as the first Sun King, he was still one of the top masters in the current ancient wilderness. No one can't be sacrificed? Yi Shiwen smiled. A feeling of sorrow welled up in his heart. So that includes me? Now, out of all the major races that influenced the ancient desolate, other than the sea race, all of them had expressed their stance. And the sea race definitely wouldn't mind getting rid of one of the top geniuses of the human race. What conditions did you exchange me for? Yi Shiwen suddenly asked. As long as you are eliminated, the ancient Phoenix world will cooperate with our human race unconditionally, the Sun King said. Unconditional. Yi Shiwen looked at the special envoy of the ancient Phoenix world. He knew that the ancient Phoenix world wouldn't be so kind to help the human race. They must have demanded a lot of conditions, including the distribution of benefits after the war, and so on. After all, there was no such thing as a free lunch in this world. It was tantamount to drinking poison to quench one's thirst. One knew that it was poison, but if one was really thirsty, what else could one do? Originally, the human race hadn't reached this stage yet. Therefore, this matter had been dragged on. The ancient Phoenix realm didn't have enough sincerity. Moreover, there were many people in the higher echelons of the human race who didn't agree to such a collaboration. But now, the ancient Phoenix realm was actually saying that they would help the human race unconditionally, and the condition was merely to eliminate him? It couldn't be said that such conditions weren't generous. The human race would be like a tiger that had grown wings if the ancient Phoenix world joined them. Their strength would increase by leaps and bounds. Moreover, they wouldn't need to agree to any harsh conditions. Therefore, they could preserve more vitality and save more resources. The benefits were immeasurable. That's right. Unconditionally. Our ancient Phoenix world will help the human race unconditionally as long as you die. The special envoy of the ancient Phoenix realm said in a resolute and decisive manner, "You have a reason to die. Everyone else will benefit as long as you die." The North Mountain clan chief and the Jiuying Demon King looked as if they were watching a good show. They hated Yi Shiwen. However, they didn't have a reason to kill him. Moreover, they weren't willing to pay such a huge price to make the human race hand over Yi Shiwen. They would have acted in private if they were in Yi Shiwen's place. However, they had mentioned the Sun King of the human race in order to force Yi Shiwen to his death. This wasn't an ordinary kind of big move. They looked at the special envoy of the ancient Phoenix realm in a strange manner. They didn't know what had happened to the ancient Phoenix realm. They had paid such a huge price just to eradicate Yi Shiwen? Was it worth it? It was obvious that it wasn't worth it at first glance. So, they didn't hesitate to give up a lot of benefit. You should have died a long time ago. However, Feng Wu-ing had fought for some time for you. He wanted you to die in a fair and square fight. He wanted you to die in his hands. However, I hadn't expected that you would be more tenacious than we had imagined. However, it doesn't matter. This is the end. The special envoy of the ancient Phoenix realm said. So that's how it is. So that's how it is. Yi Shiwen lowered his head. It seemed as if he was suppressing something. Yi Shiwen, now is the time for you to atone for your sins. We, the higher-ups, know that your parents have surrendered to the devil race. Do you think that you would have been able to live until now if the Yi clan hadn't shielded you from this matter? A human overlord suddenly shouted from below. It was the patriarch of the Thunder clan, the Thunder Marquis. That's right. Now is the time for you to atone for your sins. Prove that you and your parents aren't the same kind of people. Prove your sincerity with your death. A series of shouts could be heard coming from the mouths of these overlords. Hee, so that's how it is. Take this opportunity to eradicate an unknown remnant of the devil race? What a good plan. The Jiao-ing Demon King said with a sneer. This kid actually has such an identity. He was a guy of unknown origin. Most importantly, his parents had surrendered to the devil race, and he had returned to the Yi clan at this time. And the devil race had invaded not long after that. So, it was hard for some people not to think too much about this. Yi Shiwen was an unstable factor for the higher-ups of the human race. He was a guy of unknown origin. Yi Shiwen had displayed an unprecedented innate talent. However, it didn't mean that they couldn't abandon him. Abandoning a person who might be a problem in exchange for the full cooperation of the ancient Phoenix world was a good deal, no matter how one looked at it. No, I don't agree. Suddenly, a loud shout came from below the planet. His parents, even if there's something wrong with them, I've watched him grow up. He definitely wouldn't have colluded with the demon race. Just in the demon world alone. He's killed a demon in the celestial realm, hasn't he? It was the head of the Yi clan, Yi Tianqiong, who spoke. Just when Yi Shiwen felt that the whole world had betrayed him in an instant and the whole world was blaming him, Yi Tianqiong's words were like a ray of sunlight shining on his heart. When he came back, he had already surpassed the law manifestation realm, right? How did he grow up? Can you find even the slightest clue? Isn't this too strange? The Sun King said majestically. The higher-ups of the royal court had always been paying attention to Yi Shiwen. How could they not know anything about him? However, whether it was the Yi clan or the higher-ups of the royal court, they couldn't find out where Yi Shiwen's ultimate background was. It was as if he had suddenly appeared out of thin air. In addition, the matter of his parents had caused a huge uproar back then, and there were many suspicious points. I have also heard about what happened to Yi Junshan back then. At this time, his son came back. Is there no doubt at all? Even if he is really innocent, so what? Yi Tianqiong, don't you understand this? The Sun King continued. Forget it. Yi Shiwen, who had been bowing his head in silence, suddenly said. Head, I am very grateful that you are still standing up for me at this time. From today onwards, I, Yi Shiwen, will leave the Yi clan and have nothing to do with the Yi clan. Yi Shiwen suddenly said. Everyone looked at him, not knowing what he was going to do. I don't know what my parents did. Atone for their sins? What did I do wrong? Don't find excuses anymore. To put it bluntly, don't you just want my life? Then come and try. Yi Shiwen's face was somewhat distorted, and he said somewhat crazily, You want me to surrender without putting up a fight? That's impossible. There is no such thing as surrender without putting up a fight in my life creed. If you want my life, then come and take it. Arrogant. How dare you? As expected of a demon brat. Unreliable. Suddenly, a group of human overlords reprimanded one after another. They were a little angry from Yi Shiwen's words. How could it be like this? It suddenly became like this. Many people hadn't recovered yet. It seemed that they hadn't reacted from this sudden and earth-shattering change. They didn't understand why things had suddenly turned out like this. How come Yi Shiwen had suddenly turned into a remnant of the devil race? How come things had suddenly turned out like this? This Yi Shiwen. This battle turned out to be a well-designed plan to lure Yi Shiwen into the trap. Although I am from the sea race, I have to say that the human race is really King shameless at this time. A forthright man from the sea race said. They actually want him to die and put a big hat on him. TSK, they are really amazing. The ancient Phoenix realm is really too much. Do they really think that our human race is so easy to bully? Can they bully us so casually? At this time, many leaders of individual human cultivator forces also said one after another. In an instant, everyone was like boiling water, instantly boiling. Everyone had their own views on this matter. However, for many people, they still couldn't accept this sudden change. Alright, Yi Shiwen. Since you don't want to talk nonsense, then I won't talk nonsense with you. Hand over the young Kuanping, and I can leave your corpse intact. The eyes of the nine-headed fierce beast king turned sharp, and an overwhelming aura crushed towards Yi Shiwen. Chapter 1689. The terrifying aura instantly crushed down like Mount Tai. It was many times more tyrannical than before. The Jiuying Demon King was really starting to get serious. As a terrifying existence that was above the peak of the celestial realm, the Jiuying Demon King had once fought against an ancient ferocious beast like the Kuanping. One could imagine how tyrannical his strength was. In the eyes of many people, Yi Shiwen was almost certain to die. Being targeted by so many big shots, it would be difficult for Yi Shiwen not to die. Moreover, this time, the human clan, who was supposed to be Yi Shiwen's solid shield, did not help him. On the contrary, they thought that they were threatening him. Complete corpse? If I really die, what difference does it make? Do you think I can come up to find you after I go to hell? Yi Shiwen sneered, looked at the Jiuying Demon King and said, It is absolutely impossible to get anything from me. Today there is only one battle. Long-winded. At this time, the patriarch of the North Mountain clan instantly attacked Yi Shiwen. He was not even in the mood to say a few more words to Yi Shiwen. He directly attacked Yi Shiwen. The mighty torrent of energy engulfed everything, and the sky completely collapsed. In front of this king-grade expert, the sky was as fragile as a paper tiger, and a terrible wound was instantly torn open in the sky. Yi Shiwen is finished. Sigh, I still quite admire him. He dares to challenge these overlords. This is not something that ordinary people can do. Yes, these overlords, any one of them is a terrifying existence that can shake the ancient times with a stomp of their feet. And at this time, just when everyone thought that Yi Shiwen was going to die, suddenly, an endless amount of Zhen Yuan burst out from his body in an instant, and a mecha instantly appeared on his body. His whole body seemed to be wrapped in endless steel, and the aura of his body also continued to rise bit by bit. Celestial Realm Middle Stage, Celestial Realm Late Stage, Celestial Realm Peak. Boom! Yi Shiwen spread out his hands and took the blow of the North Mountain Clan chief. Rumbling sounds of explosions continued to erupt in his hands. The terrifying power pushed Yi Shiwen back several steps in a row. Although Yi Shiwen had fallen into a disadvantageous position, but he still managed to hold on. Everyone was stunned as they looked at the scene before them. How is this possible? Everyone was dumbfounded at once, looking at the scene in front of them. If Yi Shiwen unexpectedly defeated Feng Wuying, it was still within the scope of everyone's understanding. But now Yi Shiwen could even withstand the attack of the North Mountain Clan chief, which completely shocked everyone. After all, this was the authentic North Mountain Clan chief, not the fake one from before. And from the looks of it, although it was strenuous, It wasn't as if he couldn't fight back at all. How did he become so powerful? Someone finally asked in astonishment. He couldn't believe it at all. How can Yi Shiwen be so terrifying? The North Mountain Clan chief grunted and looked at Yi Shiwen, seemingly a little strange. How could Yi Shiwen take his blow? Although he didn't use his full strength, even if it was just an ordinary blow, it was enough to destroy an ordinary Celestial Realm Peak Master. Such a blow could even move mountains and seas. Even a Celestial Realm Peak Master would be seriously injured by this blow, let alone Yi Shiwen. Although Yi Shiwen defeated Feng Wuying just now, everyone could see that Yi Shiwen was at most at the middle stage of Celestial Realm, not even the late stage of Celestial Realm. But now he took a casual blow from him. This was too strange. At this time, everyone noticed the layer of mecha on Yi Shiwen's body. Under the sunlight, it was glowing with a metallic luster. This is armor? The North Mountain Clan chief said with some surprise. He also felt a little strange in his heart. What kind of armor was this? How could it make Yi Shiwen's strength soar by several levels in an instant? Even the North Mountain Clan's 7-colored divine robe only had a magical effect on defense. It was impossible to have such great power in other aspects, let alone raising a person's strength by several levels, raising Yi Shiwen to the level of Celestial Realm Peak in one go. Not only the North Mountain Clan chief, but even the Jiuying Monster King, Taiyang King, and the others were a little shocked, but it was just a shock. No matter how much Yi Shiwen's strength improved, he was only at the level of Celestial Realm Peak. Compared with them, he was still far behind. What's more, such a magic tool should not be able to be used for a long time. Yi Shiwen's death was almost a certainty. It was nothing at all. This is a little interesting. This kid still has a lot of benefits. A look of greed flashed in the eyes of the Jiuying Monster King. To be able to raise a person to the level of Celestial Realm Peak, if this kind of magic tool could be mass-produced, no, even if only 2 or 3 could be produced, it would be enough to greatly improve the strength of the Jiuying clan. What kind of magic tool is this? It's so amazing that it can improve a person's strength so much? Many people below were even more excited at once. This time, it really felt like there were some twists and turns. You do have a knack, but it ends here. Let me test your level. At this time, the Jiuying Monster King said. His big hand grabbed toward the void and grabbed a long spear with strange patterns. A domineering and peerless demonic aura spread out from his body. His eyes stared at Yi Shiwen with a look of interest. If it was before, except for the young Kuan Peng, nothing on Yi Shiwen could attract his attention. But now it was not the case. This kid seemed to be not simple. Come on, Jiuying Monster King. Yi Shiwen looked at the Jiuying Monster King and said. His expression was a little cold and a little crazy, but his tone was calm. The betrayal of the human clan just now did not seem to affect him at all. Whoosh! The 9-headed fierce beast demon king's spear shot out in an instant, and the laws followed it like a shadow. It pierced through the vast sky, and wherever it passed, the spear's radiance shattered the sky. A shocking crack swept towards Yi Shiwen at lightning speed. Compared to the casual attack of the North Mountain Clan chief, the Jiuying Monster King was serious. The terrifying scene was even more terrifying than before. It was as fast as a swan, and in an instant, it had already shattered the sky and bombarded in front of Yi Shiwen. And at this time, Yi Shiwen finally moved. In his body, an endless stream of spiritual ether swept out, and his aura was monstrous, soaring into the sky. The angel's sword in his hand was suddenly unsheathed, and with a sword light that filled the sky, it slashed through the sky. The terrifying sword pressure crushed the sky, crushed down, and slashed fiercely on the Jiuying Monster King's spear light. Boom! A terrifying collision sound was produced in the void out of nowhere. With the point of explosion as the center, it swept in all directions, like the Big Bang of the universe, and a huge mushroom cloud covered the sky. Compared to the current fight, the fight between Yi Shiwen and Feng Wuying just now was simply like a child's play. This was a terrifying confrontation that surpassed the level of the ordinary peak of the celestial realm. Everyone only saw a huge burst of light in the sky, and in an instant, the light that could blind ordinary people burst out. Fortunately, the people present were not ordinary people, and the weakest one was also the leader of a force at the 9th level of the celestial realm. And at this time, a shocking spear light broke through the light that filled the sky, and directly smashed that huge mushroom cloud. It turned out that after the Jiuying Monster King's shocking spear light broke through Yi Shiwen's sword light, it swept towards Yi Shiwen with irresistible force. Yi Shiwen hastily arranged a series of arrays in the air in order to stop the spear light. However, they couldn't stop the spear light from sweeping across the sky. It crushed all the arrays with a loud bang, and then the terrifying spear light directly fell on Yi Shiwen's body with unimaginable power. Boom! A huge roar sounded, and Yi Shiwen's chest was directly penetrated on the spot. The part that protected his chest was also blasted into a big hole in an instant, and Yi Shiwen's whole body was pierced through. If Yi Shiwen had not dodged at the critical moment, just that one attack would have completely shattered Yi Shiwen's heart. This spear light carried an unparalleled power, and Yi Shiwen was blasted away. His whole body was like a kite with a broken string flying towards the sky. As expected, no matter how strong Yi Shiwen is, compared to these kings of the King Division, he can't compete with them. How terrifying! This is the first time I saw a King Division expert go all out, and he crippled Yi Shiwen with just one move. This is the terrifying expert that truly rules over our ancient barons continent. Someone said with lingering fear. Almost in an instant, Yi Shiwen, who was originally majestic, was defeated in an instant. He had no power to fight back, and was heavily injured with just one spear light. This was even with that impressive armor. Otherwise, Yi Shiwen would have been blasted into a cloud of blood mist on the spot. The difference between the 8th level of the Celestial Realm and the peak of the Celestial Realm and the King Division experts was too big, too big. As expected, this Yi Shiwen is simply a dead end. Even if he doesn't resist stubbornly, he has no chance of winning against the most powerful people in the entire ancient barons. Suddenly, the Jiuying Monster King reacted and cursed, "Oh no, he's trying to escape. He actually used the power of my spear to escape. Damn it." Chapter 1690. Oh no, he's trying to escape. He actually borrowed the power of my spear to escape. Damn it. At this time, the Jiuying Demon King suddenly said furiously. At this time, everyone finally reacted. After Yi Shiwen was blasted away, he did not fall. On the contrary, he flew out at an even more astonishing speed. You can actually do this. Everyone was dumbfounded. Yi Shiwen actually took this opportunity to escape. Everyone thought that Yi Shiwen would stay and fight to the death with them, but the result was completely different. Yi Shiwen had no intention of fighting to the death with them at all. Where do you think you're going? The Jiuying Demon King, who felt that he was fooled, instantly moved and directly chased in the direction of Yi Shiwen. At this time, the special envoy of the ancient Phoenix realm, the North Mountain clan chief, and the Sun King and the others almost all moved at this time. There were several dignified masters here, and they teamed up to deal with Yi Shiwen. If they let him escape, wouldn't it be a loss of face? More importantly, if they let him escape, they would probably face his revenge. With Yi Shiwen's amazing growth rate, there might be a chance for him to grow to the king rank in the future. Every master in the king rank could be said to be a supreme overlord. With such an overlord who coveted them at all times, they felt uneasy just thinking about it. In the void, Yi Shiwen only felt the burning pain from the wounds on his body. If it was an ordinary person, he would have already fainted from the pain. However, Yi Shiwen relied on the Mingxin ancient tree to forcibly stabilize his mind. Even so, he had to endure the heart-wrenching pain every moment. The demon wings behind him almost instantly opened, and he directly flew into the void. At the same time, he continuously operated the Phoenix regeneration technique to repair the injuries on his body. Was this the terrifying master of the celestial realm at the peak of the king rank? Just one attack and he was completely injured, and this was under the situation where he had a mecha. If it was under normal circumstances, just that one attack was enough to completely kill him. Compared to this level of ancient overlord, there was still a huge gap in strength. He was very clear about this. Previously, when he fought with the incarnation of the Abyss Demon Lord, it was enough to see this. He only barely escaped from the hands of the Abyss Demon Lord by constantly escaping. Most of the reason was that the Abyss Demon Lord was afraid of the situation where there were many masters on this planet, so he did not continue to chase. This itself was enough to show how terrifying a master of the king rank was. However, he had no other choice. If he had wanted to escape from the start, it would have been impossible for him to escape from the joint attack of these experts. Only by letting their guard down and letting them think that he was already seriously injured could he possibly escape. Yi Shiwen had been planning this from the very beginning. It wasn't his style to surrender without putting up a fight. It wasn't something he would do. If they wanted his life, they would have to exchange it with their own. At this moment, a crazed look flashed across his face. The fact that the human race had chosen to hand him over was like a heavy blow to his heart. The only comforting thing was that the Yi family did not agree to this matter. From a moral point of view, Yi Shiwen could understand why they did this. As Yi Tianxiong had said before, no one could not be sacrificed for the sake of the Yi family and the human race. However, it was absolutely impossible for him to obediently surrender just because of this. He didn't know why the ancient Phoenix realm had paid such a high price just to kill him. However, he didn't have the time to think about these things at this moment. He had to think of a way to escape from this place as soon as possible. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, the overlords behind him all conjured giant nomological hands one after another, grabbing down from the void. From the front to the back, there was no room for Yi Shiwen to escape. If it was an ordinary person, he would have been killed by this kind of grabbing. However, Yi Shiwen was constantly moving in the void at this moment. His entire body seemed to be wrapped in a layer of electric sparks. Every time they seemed to be able to grab him, they would always make mistakes in Yi Shiwen's hands. At this moment, they were getting a little anxious. Everyone's speed was extremely fast. This was especially the case for those few overlords. They even tore through the void and dove in. By the time they came out again, they were already far away. They had gotten even closer to Lin Fan. Although Yi Shiwen's Devil Wings agility technique was extraordinary, but how could these overlords be taken lightly? They possessed a heritage that ordinary people couldn't even imagine. Even if their agility techniques were not as good as his Devil Wings, they were not inferior to him in any way. Moreover, their martial power was several times more profound than Yi Shiwen's. So the final result was that they were getting closer and closer. It seemed that Yi Shiwen could be caught at any time. Just like when he was being chased by the Abyss Demon Master previously, if he had not escaped to this planet, the Abyss Demon Master would have eventually caught up with him. There was almost no suspense. It's useless, Yi Shiwen. You don't have to struggle on your deathbed. Today you will die without a doubt. At this moment, the North Mountain Clan chief said, "No one can save you." However, at this moment, a sudden change occurred. In the clouds, a huge demonic claw descended from the sky and instantly grabbed Yi Shiwen. In an instant, it tore the void apart. It was so fast that Yi Shiwen could not react at all. The moment this demonic hand grabbed Yi Shiwen, The colorful divine robe that Yi Shiwen had been wearing on the surface shattered on the spot, turning into colorful rays of light. On the spot, the array was immediately followed by the mecha. The mecha that protected him under the spear of the Jiuying Demon King was also completely shattered in an instant. Then, it directly grabbed his physical body. Boom! With a loud noise, Yi Shiwen was slammed down like a cannonball, smashing into the sea of this planet, setting off a huge wave that was tens of thousands of meters high. Puff! Yi Shiwen spat out a mouthful of blood, and everything within 100 miles was dyed red with blood. His whole body smashed down, and the waves in all directions were smashed in an instant, forming a huge hole, all the way directly into the sea that was thousands of meters deep. Boom! With a huge roar, Yi Shiwen directly smashed out a huge trench on the entire seabed. Countless seabed magma spewed out, and the entire seabed shattered into a mass. After a long time, the huge space that was smashed out by Yi Shiwen was slowly submerged by the seawater, and the entire sea finally returned to calmness. But at this time, countless seawater rushed into the magma. Water and fire blended, and countless mists rose. Yi Shiwen's whole body floated above the magma. Although the temperature of the magma was very high, for him, who could even swallow the Nanmingli fire in one gulp, even if he was seriously injured, this kind of ordinary magma could not hurt him. His whole body seemed to fall apart. His whole chest was smashed by the big hole that was blasted by the Jiuying Demon King's spear. The flesh and blood of his whole body were also a mess. He was smashed by this demon claw on the spot and almost died. Even if he relied on the Mingxin ancient tree to barely maintain his consciousness, he also knew that he could not hold on for long. He could not even move a finger, and the bones of his whole body were smashed by the slap just now. Phoenix regeneration technique could not save him in a short time, and could only barely keep his life. At this time, under his thoughts, Yulian's figure finally appeared. Seeing Yi Shiwen like this, she was suddenly shocked, and quickly said, "Young master, are you okay? How did this happen?" She had been practicing in Tianyuan Mirror, and did not know the situation outside. "Open the Demon King's treasure house, let's go." At this time, Yi Shiwen could only use the secret sound transmission, and use his thoughts to tell her that the bones of his whole body had been smashed into pieces, and he could not even speak. It was really terrifying. If it was not for the colorful robe and the mecha that blocked for him at the critical moment, just that claw was enough to completely kill him. But even so, the colorful robe and the mecha had been completely broken, and obviously could not be used anymore. He could not help but feel a little pity. Yulian began to constantly pinch the technique, and in the void, a magic began to condense, turning into a huge magic array. It was naturally not so easy to open the Demon King's treasure house. Otherwise, Yi Shiwen would have chosen to hide in the Demon King's treasure house from the beginning, because that was his territory. Taking advantage of this little time, Yi Shiwen's remaining divine thoughts swept out. He wanted to see who attacked and actually injured him, and when his divine thoughts swept out, he found that the entire planet had become a complete mess. The entire planet had been enveloped by an extremely powerful array, and the space gradually began to solidify. If he wanted to escape from here by tearing the space, it would only become more and more difficult. And above the rolling demonic clouds, a majestic figure stood between heaven and earth. Yi Shiwen's pupils suddenly shrank. This was the Abyss Demon Lord. He could not help but take a breath of cold air. So, the one who attacked him just now should not be someone else, but the Abyss Demon Lord, and it was not an incarnation, but the real body. No wonder it was so terrifying and almost killed him with one claw. He suddenly remembered the problem he had talked about with the family head before. If it was only the incarnation of the Abyss Demon Lord, then there was nothing to fear. If the real body came, it would definitely be a terrible disaster. And at this time, the North Mountain clan chief, Jiuying Demon King, and the others were all besieging the Abyss Demon Lord. all kinds of terrible attacks swept out, and the terrifying strength belonging to the king grade was fully manifested. But in the face of these attacks, the Abyss Demon Lord did not care at all, as if it was scratching an itch. Suddenly, as if sensing Yi Shiwen's gaze, a big demonic hand instantly formed on the Abyss Demon Lord's body, and then grabbed towards Yi Shiwen in the deep sea. Chapter 1691. The speed of this devil's hand was extremely fast. It seemed as if it had blasted into the sea in an instant. In an instant, countless seawater was crushed. Even the space within thousands of square kilometers was shattered. An incomparably huge devil's claw clawed towards Yi Shiwen's direction. At this time, all the overlords also saw that the Abyss Demon Lord, who was completely indifferent to their attacks, actually attacked Yi Shiwen. At this time, especially those human overlords, their faces were as ugly as could be. Originally, among the words that they criticized Yi Shiwen, there was a very important point, and that was, Yi Shiwen was simply a remnant of the demon race, and they wanted him to die to prove his loyalty. But now, looking at the appearance of the Abyss Demon Lord, it was clear that he wanted Yi Shiwen to die, and did not hold back at all. That grab just now, if it were them, they would definitely be dead. Now it seemed that perhaps Yi Shiwen was arrogant and unruly, unwilling to sacrifice for the overall situation of the human race, and even stirring up trouble everywhere, provoking these overlords to personally kill him. But to say that he was colluding with the demon race was simply their own imagination. But at this time, no one cared about this anymore. In the hands of the Abyss Demon Lord, Yi Shiwen would undoubtedly die. Splash! Wherever the big hand passed, the space was completely shattered, and the seawater was completely evaporated. At this level, an expert could destroy a region with just a punch or a kick. And at this time, when the demon hand was about to grab Yi Shiwen, at this time, Yu Lian finally prepared the magic array. At this time, a crack was torn in the void, and a large array that led to the Demon King's treasure house was torn. Young master, tell Lord Yi Mo. Yu Lian sent Yi Shiwen into the crack, but she did not have time to hide, and was directly grabbed by the demon hand. Her smile was sad. Countless years had passed, and she still could not even say a word of admiration, and she was about to be annihilated? Bang! On the spot, she directly turned into a cloud of blood mist, and exploded on the spot, and a trace of her original spirit was annihilated. Abyss Demon Lord! I will definitely tear your body into pieces. Yi Shiwen, who was in the crack, could only watch this scene, and could not do anything at all. His angry divine thoughts shook the air, and turned into a huge roar, which spread throughout the entire planet. He actually escaped? The Abyss Demon King frowned slightly. He naturally felt extremely regretful in his heart. Twice, after severely injuring Yi Shiwen twice, he actually failed to catch him and allowed him to escape. To him, it was undoubtedly a great humiliation. As for Yi Shiwen's words, he did not care at all. It was just a dog barking from afar. However, he quickly calmed himself down and turned to look at these overlords. His original target this time wasn't Yi Shiwen, but these overlords? Conquering the primordial era was his goal. Whether it was the human race or the other races, they were all obstacles in his way. If he could kill all the overlords gathered on this planet, he would definitely be able to greatly damage the vitality of all the races in the primordial era. It would clear away some obstacles for him to conquer the primordial era. Humph, you people actually want to join forces against the demon race. You must be tired of living. I originally wanted to let you live for a while longer, but it seems like that's not possible anymore. The Abyss Demon Lord looked at them coldly and said, Abyss Demon Lord, I've long heard of your famous name, but do you really think that we can't do anything to you? The jeering Demon King looked at the Abyss Demon Lord coldly. Let me see how capable you are. At this moment, the Jiuying Demon King grabbed a drop of blood essence that contained terrifying power from the space, and then swallowed it. Then, the aura on his body skyrocketed bit by bit, growing against the wind. In an instant, he became a giant that was hundreds of feet tall, and then turned into a monster with 9 heads in the void. It was like a monster snake with 9 heads, except that it had 4 strong limbs. The cry was like the cry of a baby. This was the real body of the Jiuying Demon King. Jiuying? Interesting, but it's not the primordial era anymore. I'd like to see how capable the Jiuying tribe is. The Abyss Demon Lord saw the soaring aura of the Jiuying Demon King, but he didn't care at all. The strength of our Jiuying tribe is not something you can understand. Just now, I've already swallowed the blood essence of the old ancestor of our Jiuying tribe, the Jiuying Demon King, one of the 10 great demon kings in the past. Watch me fight with you now, and see how strong you are. The Jiuying Demon King laughed loudly, and his 9 heads spat out poisonous flames. Waves of turbid currents interweaved in the void, forming an extremely dangerous water and fire net, and instantly enveloped the Abyss Demon Lord. Facing the Jiuying Demon King's real body, the Abyss Demon Lord finally didn't look down on him like before. He clawed out, and in the void, rays of light of the law appeared. Boom! Both sides made a terrible collision. One side was filled with demonic flames, and the other side was merciless water and fire. The collision in the void was terrifying. Abyss Demon Lord, eat my sword! Immediately after, another terrifying pressure appeared in the sky, and a long sword appeared in the sky like a big sun. At this time, in the void, it seemed as if a noble king had suddenly appeared, and he stared at the void, as if he was conquering the world, holding a long sword to conquer everything. It was the authentic Sun King sword, and not the fake Sun King sword. It had a power that was far beyond the ordinary fake Sun King sword. Come on, when the Sun King of the human race was rampant in the world, I didn't see him. Now I'd like to see how strong his descendants are. The Abyss Demon Lord sneered. Facing the current Sun King who was holding the Sun King sword, he wasn't afraid at all, and he even had a look of excitement on his face. Die, demon! At this time, the special envoy of the ancient Phoenix realm also erupted, and transformed into an incomparably huge fire phoenix on the spot. It was thousands of feet long, and it blotted out the sky. It spouted countless Nanmingli fire from its mouth, and a sea of fire interweaved in the void. It swept out, and burned through the demon clouds in the sky. Countless demons were burned alive. Behind this fire phoenix, an even bigger fire phoenix's phantom took shape in the void. It was the phantom of the old ancestor of the phoenix race. In addition to them, the experts of various races also erupted one after another, and revealed their tyrannical heritage. They had been ranked in the ancient times for so many years, and they certainly had their own remarkable heritage. For example, the current Sun King was able to contend against the Abyss Demon Lord by relying on the Sun King sword that had been left behind by the Sun King in the past. This was a powerful divine tool that had accompanied the Sun King in his conquest of the world. Even after countless years had passed, and even the Sun King had fallen in the past, it still maintained its formidable power. Insignificant skill, break for me! The Abyss Demon Lord shouted loudly, and countless demon yuan burst out of his body. After that, an incomplete map slowly rose up. It was the legendary yin-yang life and death diagram. In the past, Yi Shiwen had obtained a small part of the yin-yang life and death diagram. At this time, the power of yin and yang filled the sky. These attacks were all blocked by the yin-yang life and death diagram, and couldn't injure the Abyss Demon Lord at all. Moreover, these attacks were all transformed into the power of yin and yang, and were absorbed by the Abyss Demon Lord. As the saying goes, chaos gives birth to yin and yang. Apart from the power of chaos, the power of yin and yang was the highest level of power. These energies, whether they were of the 5 elements or other energies, were all transformed into the power of yin and yang by the Abyss Demon Lord. Unlike Yi Shiwen, who couldn't control the yin-yang life and death diagram, the Abyss Demon Lord had obtained the yin-yang life and death diagram for so many years. Even though the diagram was incomplete, and the power of yin and yang wasn't balanced, it was enough for him to control some of the power of the yin-yang life and death diagram. He didn't need to be like Yi Shiwen, who couldn't control the yin-yang life and death diagram. On the contrary, he had to spend a considerable amount of energy to suppress the yin-yang life and death diagram. Beasts, die for me! The Abyss Demon Lord took a step forward, and instantly arrived in front of the ancient Phoenix Realm's special envoy. He directly punched. Bang! Innumerable principles of fist completely manifested at this moment, and transformed into an earth-shattering fist energy. The virtual shadow behind the ancient Phoenix Realm's special envoy was smashed into pieces in an instant. Then, the fist energy bombarded the body of this huge fire phoenix. Bang! An incomparably huge explosion sound was heard, and this fire phoenix that was thousands of feet long fell to the ground. It directly created a huge crack that was so deep that one couldn't see the bottom. It couldn't be known that this crack was thousands of miles long, and the sea was overturned for a moment. It wasn't any better than Yi Shiwen's. The dreadful strength of the Abyss Demon Lord was completely revealed at this moment. Puff! This fire phoenix spurted out a mouthful of blood. This was the phoenix's blood essence. If it were to be sold in the outside world, then every ounce of it would fetch a priceless price. However, it seemed as if it were worthless garbage at this moment. There was a huge wound on his chest, and it looked extremely terrifying. He had crippled an overlord of the king rank with just one punch. The dreadfulness of the Abyss Demon Lord seemed as if a devil god had descended at this moment. However, the silhouettes of many powerful overlords flew over at this moment, and a tyrannical aura erupted. They didn't hold back at all at this moment. The Abyss Demon Lord had already sealed this space. Perhaps they would really die here if they didn't fight with all their might. Apart from the Abyssal Demon Lord, there were also many demons who charged into the planet. The entire Alliance planet had fallen into the Devil's claws for a moment, and had sunk into a bloody storm. On the other side, bang! Yi Shiwen's body hit the floor of the Demon Lord's main hall with a loud sound. He couldn't move at all, and he looked straight at the roof of the Demon Lord's main hall. Tears unknowingly flowed down from his eyes. Abyss Demon Lord, I'll make sure that you die without a burial place. Chapter 1692. Yi Shiwen's sudden appearance scared little Kuan Ping, who had swallowed countless pellets and was lying on the ground. At this time, seeing Yi Shiwen's appearance, even little Kuan Ping, who did not want to move, quickly got up. Although he was ignorant like a child, he was not ignorant. Moreover, there was a contract between him and Yi Shiwen. At this time, he quickly opened the restriction in the demon domain, and then burned all the pellets in it, turning them into a torrent of energy that poured into Yi Shiwen's body. For him, there was no concept of waste at all. He was completely frightened by Yi Shiwen's bloody appearance, as if he would die at any time. For him, the first person he saw when he opened his eyes was like his father. Yi Shiwen, who had been taking care of him, was like a child. At this time, how could he care so much? A torrent of energy flowed in Yi Shiwen's body. At this time, Yi Shiwen could only barely suppress the sadness and anger in his heart. He operated the Phoenix regeneration technique, guiding this torrent of energy to constantly repair the bones that had been broken into powder and the completely broken meridians, etc. His body had already been cultivated to the great accomplishment of the tyrant body. It was very difficult to cultivate the tyrant body. An average person simply couldn't injure Yi Shiwen, who had the tyrant body. However, it was much more difficult for Yi Shiwen to recover after he had been injured to such an extent than an ordinary person. Otherwise, ordinary injuries could be completely healed in a moment with the Phoenix regeneration technique. This kind of injury could be said to be the most serious injury Yi Shiwen had ever suffered. He almost died. If Yu Lian did not send him away at the last moment, he would definitely die in the hands of the Abyss Demon Lord. Beep! At this time, the Phoenix regeneration technique in his body directly turned into a phoenix, covering his whole body and burning. At this time, Yi Shiwen looked like a fire phoenix in nirvana. At this time, Kuan Peng, who had always been like a child, also became completely serious and guarded Yi Shiwen's side. Although there should be no danger in this demon lord's treasure house, he was not tired at this time. At this time, his gaze became fierce. His gaze would occasionally turn sharp. After swallowing pills for such a long time, this glutton had already stepped into the ranks of Heaven Realm experts. This improvement made Yi Shiwen green with envy and hate. Compared to this little foodie, the son of God, Yi Shukong, who was known to have no barriers to cultivation, was nothing. This was the true definition of having no barriers at all. As long as one ate, one could smoothly break through. Time passed just like that. In the blink of an eye, 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. Yi Shiwen was lying motionless, but his aura was rising little by little with the passage of time. Bit by bit, he recovered to his peak. Ah! A clear whistling sound shook the entire hall of the Devil Monarch's treasure house. Yi Shiwen, who had been trapped in the Phoenix's virtual shadow all this time, finally rose all of a sudden. At this moment, divine light danced around his body, making him look like a god who had been reborn. Yi Shiwen clenched his fists and looked at his body. He had actually cultivated the tyrant body to the realm of great accomplishment, great perfection. Originally, ever since he cultivated to the 10th level, there was almost no improvement in the tyrant body. If he wanted to improve, he could only continuously destroy and then rebuild it. But with the level of Yi Shiwen's tyrant body, at most, he could blast a big hole in him like the Jiuying Demon King. It was only this time that he was almost killed by the Abyss Demon Lord with a claw. It could really be said to be a blessing in disguise. All of a sudden, he had cultivated the 10th level to the realm of great perfection. At this time, although Yi Shiwen's strength could not be said to be very strong, it was already very perfect, comparable to the physical body of a god. This was the true power of the 10th level of the tyrant body. These were all the tyrant body 10th level that Yi Shiwen had deduced. Yi Shiwen had not seen what the original version looked like, but he also believed that even if the original tyrant body was different from this, it was enough to compete with the original version. And most importantly, this heavy injury was equivalent to his meridians, flesh and bones were all destroyed, and he had obtained a new life. The Phoenix clan had the Nirvana law. After every Nirvana, their strength would rise to a new level. Therefore, the Phoenix clan would often undergo Nirvana. At this time, Yi Shiwen seemed to have undergone Nirvana. His body had been reconstructed, and he had completely opened the passage to the 9th heavenly layer of Celestial Being Realm. In other words, the originally incomparably sturdy 9th heaven of Celestial Being Realm had been completely opened up at this time. As long as he cultivated patiently, breaking into the 9th heaven of Celestial Being Realm was only a matter of time. Not enough, not enough, even if I enter the 9th level of Heaven Realm, I am still far from the Abyss Demon Lord. Yi Shiwen clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. This time, Yu Lian had died at the hands of the Abyss Devil Lord in order to save him. He didn't even know how he would face Yemo after he woke up. This time, he was the one who brought Yu Lian to participate in the Alliance meeting, but the result was like this. In fact, even if he entered the 9th level of Heaven Realm, there was still a big gap between him and the many overlords of the king rank, not to mention the Abyss Demon Lord who could easily defeat these overlords. The gap between him and the current him was simply like the difference between heaven and earth. But now there was no way, because he was facing a more urgent problem. The demon seed that had been suppressed in his body, because of the heavy injury this time, was completely uncontrollably expanding, and during this period of time, a large part of the medicinal power absorbed by Yi Shiwen's treatment was absorbed by this demon seed. During this period of time, it had unknowingly grown to a very dangerous level, and it could even be said that Yi Shiwen was completely unable to control it. In the past, he could still rely on Tianyuan mirror, ancient god scripture and so on to suppress it, but now the fully grown demon seed had almost uncontrollably grown, and it seemed to be developing to the point of maturity. And the closer it was to the point of maturity, it also meant that Yi Shiwen was also closer to the point of death at the same time. In the end, am I still going to die? Yi Shiwen couldn't help but smile a little bitterly. All these years, because of the demon seed in his body, there was not a day that he was not on tenterhooks, and there was not a day that he was not careful, and now the day had finally arrived. Suddenly, his state of mind was enlightened. At this time, it was useless to worry at this time, it was better to think about how to arrange things after his death. Yes, at this time, although Yi Shiwen had already seen through it, he also understood that this time, he was afraid that he really couldn't escape from the disaster, and when the demon seed fully matured, the moment it exploded, it would be the moment of his death. Thinking of this, he didn't want to waste any more time, and immediately opened the restriction. Countless medicinal torrents turned into a stream of energy, and directly poured into Yi Shiwen's body, and his momentum also rose little by little. Boom! 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 Almost every once in a while, one could feel his aura rise by a notch and then explode. It turned into circles of energy torrents that swept out, and a lot of energy was absorbed by Yi Shiwen, but even more energy was completely wasted, surging out from his pores, and then turned into shock waves that swept out. But at this time, Yi Shiwen didn't care about that anymore. He was going to die anyway. What was the point of caring about that? At this time, Kuanping at the side, at this time, kept shouting, as if it was saying that Yi Shiwen was a wastrel, and then in one breath, directly swallowed all the energy overflowing from Yi Shiwen's body. Although it was still a small body, its realm had already entered the celestial realm initial stage, and it already had some domineering aura like Kuanping swallowing the world. In one breath, it swallowed all the energy overflowing from Yi Shiwen's body, and not a single bit was wasted. His little belly kept moving up and down, and the moment the energy was absorbed by him, it was immediately digested by him, without stopping for even a second. This Kuanping's ability to absorb the world was also very tyrannical and terrifying. In the Demon Lord main hall, Yi Shiwen and the little Kuanping, the main and pet pair, kept absorbing the medicinal pills, and kept overflowing energy, while the other kept absorbing energy, and their momentum kept rising. In the blink of an eye, a whole 10 years had passed since Yi Shiwen escaped into the Demon Lord main hall. Boom! Suddenly, an extremely tyrannical power instantly exploded from Yi Shiwen's body, and an explosive power flowed through his body. Ninth heaven of celestial realm, I finally stepped in. Yi Shiwen slowly opened his eyes. Stepping into the ninth heaven of celestial realm, his entire strength had an earth-shattering improvement, and his combat power could even destroy a celestial realm late-stage existence. The increase in realm also bought some time for him to suppress the demon seed, and delayed the demon seed's maturity. Although he knew that this was like drinking poison to quench thirst, there was no other way. At this time, he looked at the little Kuanping beside him. It had actually reached the peak of the celestial realm initial stage, and was about to step into the celestial realm intermediate stage. He couldn't help but not know whether to laugh or cry. He had cultivated a few hundred years earlier than the Kuanping, but in the end, this little glutton had even stepped into the celestial realm earlier than him, and he suddenly had a feeling of embarrassment. Beep beep. Seeing that Yi Shiwen had woken up, the little Kunpeng cried out excitedly, roughly talking about how hard he had worked during this period of time, and asking for praise. Okay, I got it. Yi Shiwen smiled dotingly, but then his eyes became sharp. It's been 10 years, it's time to go out and take a look. Chapter 1693. To Yi Shiwen, who had been recovering and breaking through, 10 years of time was just the blink of an eye. He had no concept of time. It felt like a long time had passed, but it also felt like it hadn't passed at all. However, to the outside world, it was like a raging storm. The Abyss Demon Lord breaking into the Alliance planet and causing the various races to suffer heavy losses was already news from 10 years ago. However, the effects it caused were still present even now. Originally, the various races were still watching and didn't act against the demon race. Or rather, they were waiting for the human race and the demon race to both suffer heavy losses so that they could reap the benefit. However, 10 years ago, the battle on the Alliance planet directly caused the entire planet to explode, turning it into pieces in the universe. Countless people had died in that battle. The old ancestors of the big rogue cultivator forces had lost their lives. They were too many to count. Their mourning had spread everywhere. Not to mention them, even the old ancestors of the king and marquis families had suffered great casualties. The special envoy of the ancient Phoenix world had been severely injured. His martial arts had been crippled, and he had reverted to his original form. He had been taken back by the ancient Phoenix world. It was said that he hadn't recovered until now. The 9-infant monster king was heavily injured in that battle. After he returned to the 9-infant race, he faced a rebellion that nearly overturned the entire race. Apart from that, all the clans suffered great losses. Among them, the human clan, who was the invisible host, suffered the most. Among them, more than 5 king-ranked experts had died, and they were all killed by the Abyss Demon Lord. Apart from that, more than 10 marquises were severely injured, including the head of the Yi clan, Yi Tianqiong. He was also seriously injured in that battle and almost died. The losses of the human race were huge. However, there were benefits too. After the various races lost a few peak celestial realm and king-grade experts, the various races finally realized how terrifying the Abyss Demon Lord was. The various races finally realized how terrifying the Abyssal Demon Lord was. If this situation continued, it was only a matter of time before the demon race broke through the human race's defensive line. Once the human race was broken through, the demon race, who had a foothold in the desolate era, would quickly turn countless humans into human demons. At that time, with the human race as their foothold, they would sweep the world. In the last war with the demon clan did the same thing. In the hands of the human clan, the huge population of the human clan was just a huge population. Most of the human clan was too weak to even truss a chicken. However, once they fell into the hands of the devil race, even if the devil race didn't slaughter the human race, as long as they turned these human race into human demons, it would be a terrifying number. Just think about it, the human race's population was 10 times or even dozens of times that of the other races. If all of them were to transform into human demons, even if their level wouldn't be too high, it would still be a very frightening thing. It wouldn't be a lie to say that they could conquer the entire ancient Barrens continent. Originally, the remnants of the demon race wouldn't be able to do much. The various races had been killing and suppressing the remnants of the demon race all year round. Originally, they weren't able to do much. There were a few king-grade experts who didn't dare to show themselves. Otherwise, they would be attacked by the various races of the continent. However, at this time, with the terrifying existence of the Abyss Devil Lord, it would be difficult for the human clan to resist. Even if they had a few ancestral artifacts, they wouldn't be able to do much. Hence, due to various reasons, The various races that were watching from the sidelines joined the battle. Many top-notch experts went to the royal court of the human clan to jointly attack the demon race. The remaining experts also launched attacks on the demon race's spatial rift that they were guarding, forcing them to summon more experts back, making it impossible for them to attack the royal court of the human clan. The various races that were originally fighting against each other had no choice but to unite because of the existence of the Abyss Devil Lord. It was rare for them to work together as one. Compared to 10 years ago, the entire situation had changed drastically. In comparison, the situation that the human clan was facing seemed to have improved greatly. With the participation of the various races, the pressure on the human clan was greatly reduced. With the various races holding back a large number of the demon race's forces, the human clan could free up more time to deal with the Abyss Devil Lord outside the royal court. Just delaying the Abyssal Demon Lord was already an extremely difficult task for them. Most importantly, facing the elusive Abyss Devil Lord, they were completely on the defensive. It could even be said that they were running for their lives. However, with the Abyss Devil Lord's high-profile attack, the flames of war were burning everywhere. Even the demon-worshipping religion was attacking everywhere. Originally, the existence of the demon-worshipping religion was just a small matter to the ancient barons' continent. However, now that the various major forces didn't have the time to deal with it, it had become a huge problem. Because of this, the various major forces had no choice but to send a large number of members and disciples to eradicate the demon-worshipping religion. Boundary Gate. Back then, I entered from here. Now. Sigh. Standing at the first checkpoint to enter the ancient Baron's continent, Yi Shiwen looked at the younger generations that were continuously coming from various small worlds to the ancient Baron's continent. It was just like when Yi Shiwen first arrived. He couldn't help but feel emotional. In the blink of an eye, 100 years had passed in the blink of an eye, as if it was just a moment. Back then, he came to the ancient barons with great ambitions. Now, he had to leave dejectedly. He was reluctant, but there was no other way. He concealed his aura. The surrounding warriors were only in the great sage realm. At most, they were in the transcendent realm. None of them could discover his traces. He had already entered the celestial realm. He had integrated with the heaven and earth. Every breath he took was like the entire sky was breathing, flowing naturally. These people going in and out of the ancient Baron's continent did not expect that there would be a heaven realm master watching them at this time. For them, a master of that level was already a legend, a mythical existence. It was not an existence that they could come into contact with at all. With the passage of time, Yi Shiwen increasingly discovered that the growth rate of the devil seed inside his body had also increased exponentially. He could no longer suppress the growth of the devil seed by relying on his martial power alone. Even if he had stepped into the 9th level of the celestial realm and his martial power had advanced by leaps and bounds, but he could only suppress the devil seed for a few more years. In this case, he knew that he was almost certainly going to die. The day the demon seed broke out would be the day of his death. Now, the only thing he was worried about was his family. The Yi family had many masters, so it was not his turn to worry. He knew that he did not have much time left. At this time, Yi Shiwen only wanted to return to the true martial domain to see his parents one last time. Everything in his previous life had already disappeared like a dream. Hundreds of years had passed, and he had long regarded himself as a native of this world. All kinds of things in his previous life had gradually begun to fade away. Even if he remembered it, it would be useless. Hundreds of years had passed, and his parents of his previous life had already turned into a cup of soil. Therefore, he had long regarded his parents in the true martial domain as his closest relative. Now, he would go back to see them for the last time and accompany them for the last time. At this time, he no longer wanted to care about the righteousness of the race, or the battle between the ancient barons and the devil race. These things were not things that he could manage. From here onwards, and from here onwards, he wanted to return to the true martial domain through the world passage. He deeply sighed. He was about to directly come out of the closed-door training when he suddenly saw countless demon energies pervading the sky. Then, from the direction of the distant true martial domain's passage, a huge crack was torn open, and a shocking demon shadow suddenly jumped out of it. Yi Shiwen's heart suddenly tightened. Abyss Devil Lord! He immediately recognized this aura, the Abyss Devil Lord. Yes, he would never forget the aura of the Abyss Devil Lord until his death. If not for the Abyss Devil Lord, Yu Lian would not have died. The human warriors in the lower city gate were in a commotion. They did not know what was going on. They only saw countless demon energies pervading the air, but how powerful was Yi Shiwen's eyesight? He could see at a glance that the Abyss Devil Lord was actually injured. He saw that on his majestic body there was a huge hole that completely penetrated his entire abdomen, as if a big cannon had blasted a big hole. His whole body also seemed to be in a fierce conflict with a terrible opponent, and everywhere was badly mutilated. How is this possible? Yi Shiwen was extremely shocked. What kind of tyrannical existence was the Abyss Devil Lord? He almost killed Yi Shiwen, who was wearing a mecha, with one palm. This kind of strength was many times more than Yi Shiwen's peak fighting strength. How could he be injured? What kind of person could injure him like this? Yi Shiwen could feel that the Abyss Devil Lord was unprecedentedly weak. Although it was still terrible, it was enough to make Yi Shiwen extremely shocked. What kind of terrible thing did he encounter? Why did he come out of the true martial domain's passageway? Yi Shiwen was instantly shocked. Countless thoughts went through his mind at once, and just when he was still shocked, he saw the Abyss Devil Lord flying over from the void, and then directly grabbing down. Everyone in the entire city gate was turned into a blood mist that filled the sky, and then formed a torrent of blood mist that was directly sucked into his mouth. Instantly, his whole body was a little better, and his wounds were visibly smaller. He kept operating the demonic power, continuously digesting the blood essence of these people, and then used it to treat his own injuries. After a short pause, he immediately flew into the ancient desolation. Boom! With a loud rumble, a huge foot came down from the sky, and all the living beings in the sea within a radius of 10,000 miles were annihilated. They were all crushed to death, and then turned into a mass of blood essence, which was directly absorbed by the Abyss Devil Lord. The Abyss Devil Lord's massacre was not over yet. He went all the way into the depths of the ancient desolation, and everywhere he went, the human race, the sea race, and the alliance of the 100 races were all slaughtered, and no one was spared. Only ruins were left. Chapter 1694. This. Yi Shiwen, who had dodged a calamity, stared blankly at the place that the Abyss Demon Lord had ravaged. It was a land of death, like hell on earth. There were no living beings at all. It was a land of death, dead silence, with no living beings left. Not to mention the existence of any ghosts or grievances, as even the essence, blood, and flesh had all been sucked clean by the Abyss Demon Lord. Yi Shiwen was dumbfounded at the sight of this dreadful destructive power. Along the way, there were many experts who wanted to stop the Abyss Demon Lord, but none of them were his match, and all of them were killed. How dare you, demon! Suddenly, a powerful elite leaped out from one of the major races of the 100 Races Alliance. It was a Celestial Realm Pinnacle elite. But the Abyss Demon Lord didn't even look at him, directly grabbing this Celestial Realm expert and stuffing him into his mouth, biting him to death and swallowing him. Then, with another swipe of his claw, everyone within a radius of 10,000 li was turned into a ball of essence blood, which was devoured by him. After swallowing so many experts along the way, his complexion finally looked a little better. He was no longer sickly, and the wounds on his body were also recovering at a shocking rate. In the blink of an eye, his figure disappeared into the depths of the desolate era. Even Yi Shiwen couldn't track where the Abyss Demon Lord went. "Damn it, what is going on with this Abyss Demon Lord?" Yi Shiwen said in shock. How badly was he injured for him to need to be harvested like this? One must know that the most precious treasures in the world weren't treasures that were thousands or tens of thousands of years old, but these living beings. These living beings were born with souls bestowed by the heavens, and they had life energy. They were the most precious things in the world, so there were many evil and demonic techniques that involved absorbing the essence blood of these living beings to strengthen oneself. Just like how Yi Shiwen often used the Tianyuan mirror to turn the flesh and blood of the demon race into essence qi for him to absorb, it was the same principle in essence. However, the Abyssal Demon Master's appearance clearly indicated that he had been seriously injured and had no choice but to act like this. It was just that his method of harvesting was far more ruthless than Yi Shiwen's, exterminating all living beings within 10,000 li, turning them all into essence energy to nourish himself. However, what made Yi Shiwen even more shocked was that the Abyss Devil Lord had unexpectedly been injured. One must know that the Abyss Devil Lord was someone who could barely force him to attack even if dozens of king-ranked experts joined hands. So, what kind of person could actually injure him to such an extent that he had no choice but to flee back to the ancient barons in a sorry state? It would have been fine if he didn't think about it, but if he really thought about it, it would be extremely terrifying. The Abyss Demon Lord had survived the Great War between the demon race and the Desolate Era, and it was said that his cultivation realm had advanced by leaps and bounds. Who else could injure him to this extent? More importantly, the Abyss Demon Lord had returned to the ancient barons from the true martial domain. Yi Shiwen's heart instantly tightened, and he immediately rushed towards the true martial domain's passageway. With the martial Dao standards of the ancient barons' continent, the Abyss Demon Lord could probably destroy the entire world with a single palm strike. Looking at the Abyss Demon Lord's injuries, if he chose to pluck the true martial domain, then the true martial domain would be finished. Thinking of this, Yi Shiwen didn't have the mood to continue caring about the Abyss Demon Lord. Anyway, there would naturally be someone to deal with the Abyss Demon Lord. Swish! His figure directly tore through the vast sky, and when he appeared again, he was already at the side of the passageway entrance of the true martial domain. This entrance was very hidden, but for him who had come here once, it wasn't a problem at all. He directly found the entrance and rushed in. When he once again passed through the entire passageway and arrived at the true martial domain, it was already 10 days later. Passing through the long spatial passageway was still a very long thing for him, and it was impossible for him to reach it directly. A familiar smell entered his nose. He couldn't help but take a deep breath. He closed his eyes and felt relaxed all over his body. The spirit energy of the true martial world was extremely thin compared to that of the barren ancient world. However, this place was where his roots were. This was where his true foundation lay. His divine will instantly swept out, and suddenly, he discovered that there was a huge battlefield not far away. On the battlefield, it could be said to be a field of corpses. Countless experts' corpses lay on the battlefield. All kinds of flags, various chariots, tools, all piled up on the battlefield like garbage. His pupils suddenly shrank, and that was because he found that most of the people on this huge battlefield were actually Bai Majiao's disciples. Although they had restored their human forms, Yi Shiwen believed that he would never mistake the Bai Majiao's aura on their bodies. On the other side, there were disciples of various sects, and the majority of them were true martial university's disciples. It seemed as if they had formed an alliance to fight against Bai Majiao. How is this possible? Yi Shiwen felt a bit strange. Before he left, he had fought for true martial university for decades, and conquered all the major forces in the true martial domain, and returned to the banner of true martial university. It could be said that true martial university was the biggest force in the true martial domain. Although there were many other small sects and forces, they were all subordinate to true martial university. It was impossible to have a force like Xian Yuan Palace Hall, which was on an equal footing with true martial university. And Bai Ma Jiao was the focus of the attack. Whether it was in the true martial domain or in the ancient barons, Bai Ma Jiao was the vanguard of the devil race's invasion. It could be said that they were the spies of the human race, and true martial domain was always facing the threat of the devil race. In order to reduce this threat, Yi Shiwen also specifically wiped out Bai Ma Jiao before he left. Although hundreds of years had passed, Bai Ma Jiao's power couldn't recover so quickly, right? No matter how he looked at it, it would take hundreds or thousands of years to cultivate a new generation of experts, even in the true martial domain. This was the same. In just a short period of hundreds of years, Bai Ma Jiao had recovered to the point where it could compete with true martial university? No matter how he looked at it, this was simply not right. Yi Shiwen became a little anxious as he thought of this. In addition, the Abyss Devil Lord had come out of the true martial domain. This had intensified his worry. Yi Shiwen's divine sense instantly swept out. The entire battlefield was effortlessly shrouded by his divine sense. It could be said that the battlefield was in chaos. Countless disciples of true martial university and Bai Ma Jiao had died tragically in this battlefield. Their resentment had turned into malicious ghosts, blotting out the sky and forming a battlefield that blotted out the sun. Yi Shiwen was about to purify this battlefield. Suddenly, his gaze swept to one end of the battlefield. Several experts were trapped in a dangerous place. Countless ghosts were constantly attacking this dangerous valley outside. This was a group of 3 men and 2 women. The 5 of them had practiced a matrix technique to block the entrance of the valley. So, these ghosts couldn't rush in. However, even so, it was very strenuous for them. These ghosts weren't afraid of death. Moreover, they were being manipulated. So, they were rushing towards them at this time. Damn, why are there so many of them? They are endless. At this time, among the 3 men, one of them was a sturdy man who looked like an iron tower. He seemed to be a young warrior in his late 20s. He roared and punched out with a powerful force, repelling the ghosts that were attacking them. However, it was useless. No matter how many ghosts he repelled, he couldn't escape from the siege of these ghosts because there were too many of them. Yi Fengyun, it's all your fault. You said that you wanted to come to this ancient battlefield. Now we are going to die here. At this time, among the 3 men, a young man in his mid-20s couldn't help but complain aloud. Don't complain about my brother. Moreover, we have consulted everyone's opinions before entering the battlefield. We didn't force you. Why didn't you say anything when you had harvest? Now that we are in danger, you want to blame everything on my brother? No way. Among the 2 women, a girl who looked about 15 or 16 years old said with dissatisfaction. She was wearing a light yellow gown. At this time, it was already stained with blood. She was also very tired from fighting until now. Shueli, I didn't mean that. The young man in his mid-20s hurriedly waved his hand and said. It seemed that he cared about the opinion of the girl. Forget it, don't say anything. Finally, the young man in his early 20s couldn't help but say. Rest assured, even if I die today, I won't let you die here. The current situation is obviously that someone is manipulating these ghosts from behind. And I think that only the devil people of Bai Ma Jiao can mobilize these ghosts. At this time, I am not moving because I want to wait for him to come out. Otherwise, even if we forcibly break out of the encirclement, I am afraid that the result will not be good. Yi Fengyun is right. Even if we all die here today, it can be regarded as a worthy death. At this time, one of the 2 remaining girls, a green-clothed girl in her 20s, couldn't help but speak at this time. Her pretty face was also full of exhaustion. She didn't know how long this battle had been going on. She had already begun to feel a little exhausted, but there wasn't the slightest trace of fear on her face. "I didn't say anything," the young man in his mid-twenties said with dissatisfaction. At this moment, a series of strange laughter could be heard from the void. "Jia, I didn't expect that this old ancestor would meet a few little bastards of true martial university here. You are just a trivial sage realm, and you dare to run around. Didn't your elders teach you not to run around? Do you really think that this is the time when your true martial university rules the world?" You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.